Hello, 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 and welcome to Survivor NSFW, Professor Tim Watches Australia and Outback. I am your host, Karen Eisenberg. Before I bring in my guests, I just want to tell you that today I am wearing the Busted Can of Biscuits t-shirt. Of course, is available
last week.
Yes, exactly. I'm wearing this because I did not wear it last week. Elaine Stott was our guest, and I didn't wear this only because I had just gotten my What Up K-Star t-shirt, and I was so excited I must wear that. But I will tell Elaine that yes, this in her honor, even though she's not here, I am wearing the Busted Can of Biscuits t-shirt, which you can find, of course, on JohnnyFairplay.com. That's Jonny Fairplay, no H. And with every purchase, remember you get a call from the Johnny Fairplay. Now I'm just going to share with my listeners what just happened. For the first time, I decided to play my new theme music, which I am very, very excited about. It was written by my son, Megan Eisenberg, as a partial recompense for all of the thousands and thousands of dollars I have spent on music lessons and instruments. What I did not know was that after I played this, I also had to press the record button. So normally we go live, and so pretty quickly we would hear from people like, in the chat, have you started yet? But we are recording this and posting it tomorrow in the normal time just for scheduling reasons. So anyway, I played the song, I started talking to Tim and Bobby, and then I realized about 20 minutes in, I'm looking for the timer that, tells me how long we've been on, and I'm like, it's not there. Perhaps there is a problem. So this is take 2 of Tim Watches Australian Outback, episode 3. So Tim, first of all, I think we may have heard you. This may have even been better because I love my intro, but right before the intro started, we had a Tim giggle. And I realized that should just be should become part of the theme music. And I will see if we can make that work.
It's Sam. Your son can put the giggle into the theme music, I think.
Something like that, yes.
It should be possible to sample my giggle, and I can go up an entire octave.
Yeah.
Well, I think
okay, so. I think I know what my new ringtone might be.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Tim does have a wonderful giggle.
But I was going to pull you up about what you just said, because you were very kind and you said that we were recording this for. You said scheduling, but I would say scheduling. I pronounce schedule like shit, because I'm British. But so I don't think it's really a scheduling problem. I think it's a me problem, because I've got to. Am I allowed to say this on here? I've got.
You can say whatever you want.
Well, I have a very interesting blood disorder.
Okay.
And I was talking to one of my Russian students today, and I said, I can't see you tomorrow because I got to go to the hospital and have a blood test. And he thought there was this little intake of blood. No, it's completely routine. It's all about my haemophilia. And he suddenly got terribly excited. Said, "Oh, are you related to the Tsarevich? The fellow that Rasputin used to come and see?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "No, I'm probably more likely to be related to Queen Victoria, which is where he got it from." It's my excuse for thinking that very soon I can tuck into an entire Victoria sponge. Wonderful cake. And apparently, when she was living on the Isle of Wight and mourning the passing of her husband, she used to tuck away an entire Victoria sponge for tea every day, which is probably why she was, as sort of, her girth was about the same as her height.
Mm-hmm. I've seen pictures of her. Yeah.
But she was quite rotund, really, like a sort of spherical.
Well, it's good to know that hundreds of years ago, people used the exact same soothing mechanisms as we do now, right? You lose your husband.
Absolutely. Victoria sponge and cream.
And that's why it's called a Victoria sponge.
That's why it's a Victoria sponge, absolutely, because she tucked into it so often that you couldn't possibly consider calling it anything else after so much effort from the royal chops. But yes. Anyway, sorry, I'm taking up so much time, and we got to introduce Bobby.
Yes, I was going to also bring in my guest, Bobby Goodsby from RHAP and the Big Brother Live feed updates. And Bobby was also telling us that you are also writing for another website. So let us know all about that.
Yeah, I'm writing for ProgrammingInsider.com. I'm doing Big Brother articles each week about their Vegas odds to win. We were doing it for Vegas odds to win and to make jury. Now that jury is here, it's getting to the end game and trying to figure out who's going to have the best odds to win this thing. Like I told you guys before, my buddy Doug got me the job, and so I'm very grateful to him. So shout out to Doug. He's a big fan of the show as well. So yeah, no, I'm just really excited. It's a cool opportunity outside of RHAP that has just been on this crazy whirlwind that I've been able to be a part of.
Well, I'm sort of interested. I've still not seen Big Brother, I'm afraid, here or with you, but it's being drip fed to me by Karen.
Well, we will have a show about Big Brother maybe after.
You'll have to subject me to Big Brother. I am sort of in opposition to it because I remember here there was a lot of fuss about a lady called Jade Goody who. I know the story, but a lot of Americans probably don't. So why don't you share that story? I don't know enough about it really. I know that she became notorious, which is to be famous for a bad reason, and she was quite abusive. And I remember my partner watched that series of Big Brother when she and Shilpa Shetty had a fight over a gravy cube. You don't have gravy cubes in the States, do you?
No.
I know. That's like a little cube, something you would add to a gravy, like to give it more flavor.
Oh,
or whatever.
Gotcha.
We have that. Is that what you're speaking? Yeah. So that's like a bouillon poo. We have those. That's not what we.
I think gravy, by definition, is fairly foul. I mean, if you want gravy, just leave the washing up in the sink for a little bit longer, and then you've got an entire gallon of the stuff. I mean, I just think, oh my God, if somebody's going to serve me some meat, I like to have it pristine. So that I don't like this a wash with some sort of strange brown liquid. In any other walk of life, why would you cover food in brown liquid? It just seems that's what's going to happen eventually.
I agree with you, Tim. I'm not a fan of brown gravy, but white gravy is one of my favorites. So
a lot of people.
I hesitate to draw any images about that.
But you know what I think happens also? Like most people probably don't make a very good gravy, and so you try theirs and you think, oh, this is not tasty. And you just decide you don't like gravy. But really your problem is that the people who are cooking for you do not know what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because especially if you add, so I'm saying, so I do a fair amount of cooking. And so it depends on you. I don't put gravy on a steak, but if you're making like a pot roast or something like that, the gravy is the best part. And so if you're adding what you call a gravy cube, that's almost cheating, right? Because it gives you all of it. And basically it's wine. Well, no, wine is good, but sometimes I don't even use it. But if you add that little cube, it's a way of adding MSG, which makes everything taste better. But you still have to start with a decent gravy. If you take that cube and you just pop it, if you just take that cube, you're saying like you mix it with water and that's the gravy? No, that's horrible. That's not gravy. No, that's not gravy. That's not gravy.
Yeah, I didn't even know what it was. I was thinking just like an ice cube.
Yeah, I am aware of sort of watery substances that you need to add certain things. Like if you're making a shepherd's pie, you want to have a little bit of sort of goo in there, or a stew or something, or
right.
Right.
But, so do you eat those gravies? Like if you make a stew, is that something, or even then you just want to eat the meat and take the liquid?
I really just want to eat the meat. I'm quite fussy, but when I make it for other people, I do put in all the sloppy stuff and eat that. It's okay. But mostly I bow to the fact that my partner does the cooking here, and I don't. Though I quite enjoy it. And occasionally I'm persuaded to cook on camera, which I think is quite fun.
Yeah, I saw that you posted something. I told you
there's chaos, and I tend to do a little bit of singing while I'm cooking, and I think that's quite fun. So
I need to catch up on Tim's social media. I told him yesterday, I said, as soon as this show is over, then I will have a few hours before I have to start preparing for my next show, which is tonight. But we were talking a little bit about what's going on in the Big Brother house this year. And I do want to say, let's, in terms of things, it is getting better, as much as I hate to use that word, because the stuff that's going on in the Big Brother house today in terms of racism is mostly what they call microaggressions. Some of them are not that micro. But there was no use of the N-word. There was nothing that was said directly to anybody. But there were things like, so when Christmas, who was the head of household, she had to decide who to put in danger. So she put these two women, both of whom were African-American, up on the block. And then she expressed that she was afraid that one of them was going to come after her with a fork, stick a fork in her face, or shoot her or something like that. Which is, again, is it racist? Yes. But it's not as bad as calling somebody a name to their face, which has happened in previous seasons. So yay for progress.
I think, Karen, on the contrary, the moment you're doing something on television or recorded media, you are doing it to people's faces, whether they're behind your back at the time when you do it or not.
Oh, I'm not saying that anything was okay, but just when I talk about racism in the Big Brother house, I do think it's important because people who aren't watching, just so you know, nobody is throwing the N-word around. It's not that bad. But
I don't think there's levels of racism. Something either is racist or it is not. Number one, and number two, I remember having a spat with one of the leaders of our political parties in Britain, and he didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with a joke. And so he dismissed the problem by saying, well, it's just a joke. Can't take a joke. And I thought, well, at the time I thought about it very deeply. And I thought, actually, it's about, it doesn't matter what your intention is. And this is something which is so difficult for us to process. So very often when you're children, you say, well, I didn't intend to do it. And that's then you're then sort of forgiven because your intention was okay. And in British law, of course, there's a difference between murder and manslaughter because you didn't intend to pick up the knife and kill your husband or whatever. It just happened to be available. Oh, what an interesting thing! We just have them lying around. Bang. Not really my fault. I didn't intend it. So intention is sort of drilled into people that intention is important, and I think I think this isn't true. I think
I was not trying to make it sound like any of this was okay. I'm just like I do see kind of like the level of evil as being a little bit different, at least if you know that you're not supposed to say certain things to people. It doesn't make it okay that you also say them about people. But I'm thinking about, again, the people in the house who, because like I said, we've had some things that were really, really, again, I don't even want to call it worse, but things that many people would have thought.
Oh, I think that we can grade it in one sense. Say this is bad racism, this is not so bad racism, but it's all racism and it's all pernicious. And the problem is it's the effect it has on the individual, particularly the victim, or those people witnessing it.
Oh yeah, when they get out of the house and they know some of these things that have been said. And I have a feeling that, with Christmas's comment about, we'll see about Bailey, who is no longer in the house. So she's probably already gone home and seen it. But I think the one that's going to be, and that's going to make her upset, but I think the person who's really going to be upset is Ian. Because there was another controversy in the Big Brother house while all the racism stuff is going on. So there is somebody in the house who has been very open about the fact that he's been diagnosed with autism. But even before he was diagnosed, Ian was just kind of famous. He does a lot of rocking. He likes to go on
like this.
Right, yeah, and he would even sit on the hammock outside, and that is kind of how he self-soothes. And I kind of love the fact that in 2020, he's just kind of doing that, and everything, and and the world goes on, right? He doesn't feel the need to hide it. Right, he's just Ian.
I do it a little bit. Isn't there a nice expression? Davening is there's
right. The davening is Yiddish for praying, and yes, many people rock when they pray. The same thing, but it kind of gets you right.
It's a natural soothing process, and it's rhythmical, I think it's very positive.
Yeah, it was very lovely until 4 people, one of whom is supposedly a good friend of his, and they have a final 2 and all of that. And they're making fun of the rocking. And so it wasn't okay. So Nicole so there were 2 former winners in the house, Nicole and Ian. And so clearly they are working together. And I think they were friends before they went in the house. And so Nicole was not the one who started it, but she was one of the ones who was present.
Mhm.
And when I forgot exactly what Memphis said, but basically, I can't look at him. Right? It just upsets him.
And
What
you know,
exactly did he say, Bobby? Do you remember the exact words?
yeah, Memphis went in and basically said it reminds him of The Shining and those little girls standing there saying red rum. He's like, I feel like I'm gonna see him in my nightmares standing over me, just rocking. And
So it's just look. The whole thing about racism is that it's reducing. It's avoiding seeing the person.
Mm-hmm.
It's substituting some sort of stereotype
Mhm.
for an individual. And in a program like Big Brother and in a program like Survivor, we should be focusing on the individuals who put themselves out there
Mhm.
to be part of our entertainment, and we should be celebrating, the character, not
Mhm.
this, not this bland stereotype. Before we had our little catastrophe.
A little catastrophe. They had to start.
I was saying that racism is part of a sort of a gathering problem that we've got in language, that we go for something simple and ready-made, oven ready, as Boris Johnson would say, and it's just sort of and we ought to be more creative. But it's very difficult, when we're angry, to have control over what we're saying. And I'm as guilty as the rest of us, really. If and Julie Andrews, I think I take solace from the fact that Julie Andrews probably lets slip the occasional bugger, and.
So we were discussing, right? So let's try to get back into this. The whole discussion of the difference between curse words in the U.S. and the UK. We were discussing the use of bloody, right, and bugger, which are both things I have heard coming out. I've spent a little bit of time in the UK, so I'm familiar with it. And I think a lot of Americans, if you ask them, the bloody hell might be something that they've heard, but we certainly don't use it. And bugger.
Well, if you haven't heard it literally, sort of in a British home, you will have heard it from Ron Weasley in Harry Potter, and it's got nothing to do with red dripping liquid. It's a contraction of the word of the expression "by Our Lady." It's a reference to the Madonna, so it's terribly religious. And there's so much of this religious language which dominates our culture, and we just use it routinely. And if we go to other European languages, the curse words are mostly religious and quite unashamedly so. Certainly when I think of my time in Greece and Russia. People are using sort of undiluted religious language when they're getting angry in a lift or something, or an elevator, and you think, oh, why did you just say that? I know what you're saying there, and we have a few of those. You have a few of those in. Gosh, I think is the most interesting one in America. And people think this is okay. Gosh is simply a contraction of oh God anyway. So why gosh? What, Bobby? What's your favorite swear word, profanity, or
we should have Tim after the Big Brother season is over. We should have Tim explain this to Nicole, because I am bad at impressions, but this one woman again who's been horrible to this man who was supposed to be her friend, and just in general is disliked in the fan base for certain things. But gosh is one of those words that she whines.
I know the word gosh. I mean, it's like somebody. I've got two pet hates. One is oh gosh or gosh, when they really want to say God, and the other one is where somebody says oh fudge or something ridiculous. And he's like, oh, for goodness sake!
And she's notorious for both.
It's such a good expression, for goodness sake. It's got a real push. It's got a plosive beginning. For goodness sake! And you even have a moment to catch your breath before you do it.
Yeah.
But Oh, so Bobby, what's your choice? We need a thesaurus of obscenity here. Come
What's your
on.
favorite curse word, Bobby?
Oh man, I'll
just
just go.
your button. Throw it out. You can regret it later.
I'll just probably my favorite word to whenever I like bump my knee or hit something, it's probably oh shit, something like that.
Yes, we used to try shoot is often Americans use if you're trying to shit.
Yeah, well, shoot must be
Yes.
a collection of shit. And I find I remember again. You mentioned Yiddish earlier, but I remember in the Hasidic community, people used to remove vowels or change vowels of words they didn't like. Have you
really?
across?
Okay.
And I think,
like that? Like using shoot rather than or just.
Well, I was thinking of the word Christ actually.
Okay.
And so things like Yoshki and so on, but
they take the vowels out because, like I said, they've referred to him as
but this has a very, very long history in Hebrew.
Yeah,
going right the way down to the Tetragrammaton, the divine name. So one can see where that happens, and I wonder if the shoot is somehow a result of that, and that this might be something something from the Jewish community that came in through New York and then went out into the rest of the world. I still find it really objectionable. Let's put shoot in my list. So fudge, shoot, and gosh. Yeah, they should be excised from our vocabulary.
So you're saying if you want to swear, then swear, and if you're not going to swear,
exactly.
Swears, right?
Yeah. You think, what's wrong with a good shit every so often?
Nicole will drive you crazy then. In 10 years when you get to Big Brother All-Stars 2. And trust me, I honestly want to tell you, don't go down that path. For as amazing as I think Big Brother is and how much good there was from this show, it was my first love before. Well, I can't really say that. I saw Survivor 1 and 2, then took years off, and then got back on Big Brother, and then got back on Survivor. So Big Brother's been my, adult life favorite show. But I will say this. There has been a few seasons that have really brought the community down and have brought us as a whole really to a different point in our lives where we're just like, okay, this is not acceptable. We don't want this. We can't have this. Especially this one season that was just so bad. It was getting national attention for how poorly these people were treating African Americans or technically anyone in the house that was different from them. Especially one of the guys who ended up winning, he was a homosexual. They would make comments about him as well. And so when we saw things like that, that really started kind of, unfortunate to watch. And we expected more out of this season.
Yeah, you see, one of the problems, Bobby, is one of the things that makes me warm so much more to Survivor as opposed to Big Brother, and indeed to a certain extent the Circle, is that on Survivor you've got something to do. Whereas on these other shows you're actually almost forbidden from doing anything. In the Circle, thank God, we were allowed to take books. I took in a huge chunky volume of Dickens, and I hardly got through it. Some Dickens is impenetrable.
I was curious,
but
I was like, that had to be so boring. Like just being in a room by yourself. Like at least in Big Brother, you're around other people. The Circle, you have no one.
I did that for 2.5 months. Probably going to do it again pretty soon. And same thing. Like,
I think the works of Shakespeare and audiobooks I recommend enormously.
But I get books and I get my knitting and I can cook and whatever. I don't need other people around.
No, I'm very comfortable with my drawing. I mean, I found I did more drawing than reading when I was in the Circle because it's sort of active. And reading can turn into a sort of passive activity, particularly if you're a little bit on the tired side. I find I open a book, a sort of good book, as opposed to sort of a ridiculous thriller. I find thrillers can keep me awake, but a good book can send me to sleep probably quicker than than an episode of 24. And
You fall in the middle of 24. Why am I not surprised?
I love 24, but if you switch off for a few minutes, you don't know what's going on, and then you're away. And it only takes a few seconds of distraction, and you then have no idea what's happening. And to me, all that sort of tension, which is sort of built into the show, rather like Rambo, it has nowhere to go because I don't know what's going on. Stop! I don't know what's going on. Stop! Okay, if you're not going to stop, I'm going to sleep. And I'm away. And with Rambo, I remember seeing the first Rambo film. Well, I don't. That's exactly the point. I remember going into the cinema, and I remember sort of something about the opening credits, and I remember the end. And so it's up there. It's up there with Medway. Is it Medway or Midway? Which
Midway.
Midway.
I had to go to the premiere, and so I was on my best behaviour and in my suit and all this sort of stuff. And I was sitting next to some critics. I was away within seconds, really. I mean, every so often I opened my eyes and there was another plane, and I was thinking, well, this is a continuation of the same sort of rubbish, really. And it was just unwatchable, and went on for me it didn't. For me it was sort of 10 minutes.
It was over very quickly for you.
10-minute film, and I loved it. The person who was sitting next to me, who was writing for, I think, the Sunday Times, one of the main newspapers in Britain, said, nudged me on the arm as the lights came on. He said, "Did you enjoy that?" "Oh yes," he said. He said to me, "Am I allowed to write about your experience?" I said, "Yes." I think it sort of sums the film up, don't you?
Yeah, so some critic wrote something to the effect of, "The gentleman sitting next to me just slept through the entire film."
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So we're 20 some minutes in, so it might be just around the point. No, but this is normally about the point where we actually get into the episode. So let's try to do.
Well, I just think the comparison between Big Brother and Survivor is incredibly relevant, And I'm making this comparison without a lot of experience of having seen Big Brother, so I am I'm getting it sort of third hand. I remember my partner watching Big Brother, and I remember sort of slightly, I think I might have slightly mocked.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say real quickly. There's one big thing about Big Brother, though, is one, it's a much longer commitment. You're 3 times a week plus other things. It's a big thing. And also the US version is completely different from the UK version. It's a totally different thing.
That I'm beginning to understand. I now have a very good friend who was who came second in the last I think the last season of Big Brother in Britain.
But Big Brother in the in the UK it's like the first season of Big Brother in the US 20 years ago, where the audience votes every week about who goes home.
Yeah.
Right. It's no jury.
And of course in Britain a rapidly diminishing audience, because it moved from a major channel to a minor channel, and it moved from being a major show to being something of a footnote. Which may be a shame, but I just think what little I have caught from Big Brother, clips over the years. There was one clip of a politician on a sort of celebrity Big Brother who was made to pretend that he was licking milk out of a saucer, and in doing so, he said goodbye to his political career. We may, in one sense, celebrate that moment, because his political career really shouldn't have gone anywhere. It's amazing it went. But it certainly was doomed to no further progress after he licked imaginary milk out of somebody's hand. And he was pretending more than that to be a female cat. The mind boggles at the sort of nonsense that producers can get people to do in front of a camera when they have nothing else to do, when they are bored out of their silly minds. Well, this man doesn't have a very big mind anyway. I think after leaving Big Brother, he went on to RT, this sort of strange Russian hybrid television, and he pontificates to an audience of 3, and I just think. it is extraordinary. He was somebody, incidentally, who I thought was probably one of the most creative speakers that we had in British politics. Insofar as very little of what he said had much of a foothold on truth.
But you really feel like this is what killed his political career, was just that moment on television?
I think his political career was well on the rocks by the time he went into Big Brother. But I think he'd been sold the idea that Big Brother would revive his political career. Now, there are some shows which would revive your career. There's a show called Strictly Come Dancing,
right,
where you're learning a new skill. I think that's an interesting.
We have that here too. We call it Dancing with the Stars, but it's the same.
Yeah, and you have some of the same judges who scoot across the Atlantic and judge your show, then come back and judge ours. Bruno Tonioni, I think, is the main one who manages to do both at the same time. It's extraordinary. He's bilocating. I thought only Saints and managed that, but Bruno Tonioni is a good second. So I think if he'd gone on to Strictly Come Dancing, he might have revived his career in some ways. But there was
because they don't make their contestants look silly, whereas Big Brother, like I said, they live on making people look silly.
Yeah. There was
I feel like, if you're a politician, I'm going to have to defend the show on this a little bit, because if you are somebody who has a political career, right, you should have the kind of judgment about what kinds of things you should or should not do. Like in the current Big Brother house, and then we really do want to get back to 20-year-old Survivor. But what's going on in the Big Brother house is even more concerning, because they all went through bias training, right? Not only did they, we were speaking about this before, but they did this season as an all-star season, right? Partly because of COVID, it would be easier to cast, but also because they have had these, issues with racism, and they've had it like 3 out of the last 5 years. And so they thought, okay, we're just going to do an all-star season. We know all of these people. They've already been in the house. They haven't done anything that's been really problematic, so we should be good. And then on top of it, they put them all through some kind of a bias training, because the issue is not just direct racism. I don't know exactly what they did, but I know but you teach people about the idea of implicit bias. Yeah. Yes, because I do have to say, 5 or 10 years ago, I don't know that I really understood implicit bias, and the fact that, we are in fact, they were right on South Park. Everybody's a little bit racist, right? So they really tried to set this up as much as they could for a season where there would not be any issues. And we're only a month in, and we've already had several big issues. So again, what I love about watching Big Brother, and I came to Big Brother much later than Survivor, and what I love about it is the fact that you can watch the feeds and then 2 days later see how they edit that footage into an episode, and what they include and what they don't include. And so that's what's really interesting.
You're getting edited feeds, because you're not getting feeds from every camera.
Of course, and they can also take the cameras off. There's something like 100 cameras in the house, but what they do is supposedly you have 4 cameras you can watch, but really it's 2. So they cover 2 rooms, and in each of those there's 2 cameras that they can kind of go back and forth on. So obviously a lot of things are happening in the house that we're not seeing, and they do have that ability. So this just happened yesterday. So we talked about with Ian and this guy who, they've been making fun of him. So a couple of the people who are involved in that were called into what they call the diary room, where they go to do their confessionals or whatever. And we don't know exactly what they were told, but they were told that, that Americans saw that and it wasn't great. And so now one of the people who was involved is now the head of household. And normally she would definitely want to put Ian up on the block and vote him out for game reasons. But after she had that little talking to from the producer, she decided that there's just no way in heck that she's going to put him up. Now, in the end, she may end up putting him up, right? But my point is that if she didn't, the viewers who do not watch or follow feeds would have absolutely no idea why. Like if she were to nominate, somebody in her alliance or something, they would say, why doesn't she just put Ian up? Right. And the real reason she's not putting Ian up, or thought about not putting Ian up, was because of this thing that, again, none of the viewers, they don't want us to talk about that. Right. So very few people have seen the actual footage of what they said. Oh, and that's what I was going to say. And then later they're discussing it. And every time Danny says something like, I can't put Ian up because, and they cut away.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first few weeks, and normally the divergence between what's actually happening in the house and what we're seeing on the episodes, sometimes it's fairly close, sometimes it's not. But when it's not, like I said, it's not just knowing that, these people are racist or whatever. It really affects the gameplay. Yeah. And they have to figure out how to tell us a story that makes sense, right, without getting into the things that they really wish hadn't happened.
Don't you think that we would be? Don't you think that the program like Big Brother or Survivor or The Circle, for that matter, would be doing us all such a favor at this particular moment when we've got the problems of Black Lives Matter, when we've had this sort of rise in anti-Semitism and we've got prejudice bubbling all because actually, people have been in lockdown and they don't have anything to do. So all the worst characteristics is sort of bubbling to the top, percolating up like a sort of.
And I should say this, right? These people are under a tremendous amount of stress, and when you are under stress, that's when people tend to say things like that.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is, I don't believe the majority of people are evil, and the majority of people, we all make silly mistakes. We all say silly things. What these programs can do is show us how we can recover, and give us the opportunity, or give the talent on these shows the opportunity to sort of take it back, turn it round.
And I think that's what they were trying to do this with Danny and Nicole, right? To kind of give them a heads up. But again, on the other hand, that is interfering with the game. I talked about this. Sometimes interfering with the game is a good thing. But with something like this, I would rather they not get a heads up, right? I want to see them naturally behave. That's why we call them hamsters, right? I want to watch them in their maze. And I don't want somebody telling them to tone it back because America's getting upset.
Karen, I'm afraid the idea about these people being entirely independent and not influenced by production at all would be very fantastic.
I know that. But all right.
So that diary room intervention is a way for production to say, at this point we are actively intervening and we're letting you know we're intervening. But there's.
But they're not doing that either.
Like I said, Survivor. With Survivor, there's production all over the place.
Right, but the point is, if they wanted to tell that story, then they would show us what they said about Ian, and they would tell us that they were spoken to in the diary room.
Yep.
Right, and then we could see Danny saying, "Hey, I have to change my game because of this." We don't see any of that.
But
that's my point.
I would be happy enough. I'd be happy enough for production to go on independently if that then led to this amazing scene where somebody has said something appalling. And then finds a way to recover and to show us, to show the world how you can turn something so foul into something positive.
But CBS doesn't want to be associated, and like I said, in their minds, and I understand what you're saying, Tim, and I don't disagree, but in their minds, it's like the show has been associated with racism and bullying and stuff before. They thought that they had found a way to solve that problem.
How can you solve this problem?
Well,
you're dealing with people often with the they're not thinking about each other. They're thinking about their own appearance on national television. They are self-obsessed, and if you're dealing with people who are so obviously self-obsessed, all this sort of prejudice, all this nastiness is going to come out because they want more airtime, and also then you've got this competitive game element as well. I am surprised there's not more of this going on in Big Brother, in Survivor. Maybe there is.
Well, I think there probably. I mean, some people will say that it's a different casting pool. There is some truth to that. That Big Brother people tend to be younger, and also just because to play Big Brother, you have to be able to get out of work for 3.5 months.
Yeah.
Right. So that might, but I also do think, we seem to think, Big Brother's different. One of the reasons it might be different is because that we do have access to the feeds, and it's very possible. And I think in 40 seasons, it's hard for me to believe that it hasn't happened where something that was, difficult was just papered over and we never saw it. And as fans, sometimes we hear stories like that.
And I will say this too. There's a couple issues that I think that have happened, especially with this season in regards to everything. Is one, I think CBS is just tired of this being the narrative of their show. This has happened now, like you said, 3 out of 5 years or something like that. And there's at least been something, maybe not to the full extent. Like this hasn't been as prevalent as it has been.
19 wasn't really racism. It was just bullying. And then, but similar issues. Yeah.
15 was aggressive racism. And then even 21, there was, underlying racism and sometimes blatant. So I think they're tired. And I think they also didn't expect this from their stars, these people that they felt like they could trust. So they feel like this is them trying to protect their stars. This is the value to their show. These people are what make them as big as they are. They need to protect them as much. So I think if it was a regular season, this might not have happened. They might not have interfered in this way because I think it's one, they're tired, and two, they're trying to protect these people that are valuable to their show.
No, you're right. You're right. A lot of these people are. I'm really glad you pointed that out because I didn't really think of it in those terms, but you're right. A regular season, you can throw any 1 or 2 or 3 people under the bus. These are the marquee names in Big Brother. I mean, we've got Danny Donato. Okay, we've got who is, I think many people would think we're supposed to call her Danielle Donato, we're supposed to call her Danny Briones, but she's the same person. Right. They don't want her to look bad. And even Nicole, who again, a lot of the fans do not really like, but she is a winner, right? And she makes her living, or she was making her living as an Instagram influencer. I think that's probably over now because all of her brands have pulled their sponsorship.
Oh, because of racism.
Because of Ian and the autism issue.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And we can go back and forth about whether that's right or wrong. I really do think I'm not saying that if somebody does something in the Big Brother house that you don't like, that you should call their employer.
No.
Right. But this is that's wrong. But if this is a case where, she's an influencer, that means that, this is her brand. Right. And she wants her brand to be a certain thing. And your brand can't be that you make fun of people with autism.
Absolutely. But do you not think a show like Big Brother has a duty to turn this round?
It's supposed to be a social experiment.
Yeah, I think it's showing people.
A social experiment. You can't wheel that one out after 20 years, Karen.
You're both right. Really, you're both right. It's you're right and you're right. Who's right? They're on the roof. You're right. And you're right. Who's right? You can't both be right. You're right too. Right. I can't give it over, but that's a whole scene from Fiddler on the Roof. So anyway, let's talk about Old School Survivor, where we don't see. Well, I shouldn't say yes. We are going to see some racism this episode. So yeah, just a little bit, a little bit.
I don't remember it.
We'll get there. When we get there, we'll get to it.
Please. I don't.
So the beginning. All right, we'll get there.
I'm becoming so inured, having seen so much reality television. My social antenna is
So at the beginning of episode 3, we see that Scoopin wants to kill a pig. Right. He's really sure that he can. And Varner tells us again that Scoopin is an idiot. Right. Now, just remember, right, we talked about this. You never go full Scoopin. Right. We talked yesterday about Scoopin.
Oh, yes. I keep forgetting about it.
So that makes me, any qualms I might have had about making fun of Mike Scoopin are gone.
Yeah,
right?
Never go full Scoopin.
Never go full Scoopin. So we're starting to think Jeff Gardner probably was right in telling us that Mike Scoopin is in fact an idiot. And we see when we go to the coming next time on Survivor, we see next episode, we see there's blood around. And Mike is actually, did you see this? He's actually painting
I did see this, yes. I mean, I just think the pig sticking thing is an unnecessary. I think they're trying to they're trying to get Lord of the Flies in there, and sort of let's have some more. Let's have some more of these sort of references to Golding, and it's just a bit boring, I think. Now, the moment I heard pig, in fact, the moment I ever hear the word pig, I think of Maggie Smith.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know the film, because it was turned into a musical? And
which film are you referring to?
I think the musical is called Betty Blue Eyes, and a friend of mine was going to direct it, and he rang me up and he said, "Can you train a pig for the stage?" And I thought, well, no, not really. That's the problem.
Sure you can. Pigs are smarter than dogs and cats. You can train a pig.
Unfortunately, they don't train very well. You can get them
really?
To do things, so you can get them to do a limited. So they had huge problems with Babe, Pig in the City, and Babe. And they got around it by having lots of different little pigs, I believe.
Well, that's what you do anytime you deal with animals or children, right? Ideally, you want to have multiple copies that you can swap in and out.
You can't have an entire piggery at the back of the Palladium Theatre, or that wonderful theatre at the bottom of the Marquee. The one where Julie Andrews did Victor Victoria. I can't remember. I went all the way to New York in sort of honor of that, and I stayed above down, and I saw the great Julie doing her thing. So you have much bigger theatres in New York. We have smaller theatres in the West End, but I don't think even in a big New York theatre you could fill all the dressing rooms with pigs. So there would have been problems to get one live pig, and pigs are big animals as well.
Yeah, no, even dealing with a dog, which is an animal that is relatively easy to train. Look, we did Annie when my kids were back in school. The school did a production of Annie, and our dog Gingy was Sandy. Because she kind of looked the part, and she was actually pretty smart and very well housebroken and all of that. But even then, we had had some ideas about the girl who plays Annie being able to call the dog over. We just, at a certain point, we just gave up on that. We just put the dog on a leash, and she just kind of dragged her around because and also we are not professional dog trainers, so I'm sure that if we had a professional trainer, again, Gingy was a fairly smart dog. But yeah, my point is that working with children and animals, as I'm sure is very, very fraught when you're doing anything live.
So we thought that probably he could have a live pig at certain times, because there's a producer called Cameron McIntosh who said he could only do it if he had a live pig. So we thought he could have a live pig for certain points in the show, and the rest could be animatronic, and that suited our desire for puppets and things, because we both have a love for puppets. Anyway, in the end, he didn't do the show. I think somebody else eventually did the show. But it was based on a film with Maggie Smith and Michael Palin, who were married. And
the film was called what, Tim?
The film was called... Oh, what was it called?
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Now you put me on the spot. I can't remember the name of the film now. Oh my goodness! It will come back to me in a few minutes. But it's about a pig, and it was during the war, during rationing, and Michael Palin was playing a chiropodist, and Maggie Smith was his wife, and they were given a pig, and they were keeping the pig secretly from the pig police, and Maggie Smith had an elderly mother played by Liz Smith. And if you think of Maggie Smith as this great icon of British acting talent, she was acted off the stage by this wonderful old lady, Liz Smith, who always played old ladies.
Is it a private function?
A private function, yes. And Liz Smith had this great line where she opened the door and she'd been told there's no pig here, and whenever she opened the door, she said, "No pig." And so whenever I see a pig, I think not so much of Maggie Smith, who was spectacular anyway, but I think of Liz Smith.
And I just think of Babe, because I'm obviously much more lowbrow.
Babe is great as well, but Babe, Miriam Margolyes in Babe is spectacular. There's a lady with no filter. Wonderful.
But yes, no, pigs are smart. And again, I haven't had pork in 30 years, but people seem to like it. So quite frankly, I can live. Yeah, bacon is good, but other than that, I could take or leave it.
And can I ask you this real quick, Tim? And I haven't been able to check this out. What are your impressions from this season so far, opposed to Borneo?
Excellent question. Excellent question.
The quality is so much improved.
Mm-hmm.
The filming quality, the cutaways to live animals and stuff is actually integrated into the storytelling. The one bit which is where clearly they've spent a lot of money that I could do without is the night scenes, the sleeping scenes, which today basically involved a lot of back rubbing, quite a lot of suggestive back rubbing,
right?
And flanking it was it turned into a verb? I think flanking it or something. Lying next to somebody.
Flanking.
Flanking, yes, I think flanking.
I mean, they certainly sleep cuddled up together, right? They do in Borneo. That's always because they really are cold.
Yeah.
So that's definitely so.
But I can live without the night photography. I think that's I think it's an indulgence, and in the first episode, it was just embarrassing and led to embarrassing conversations, or basically a monologue which was slightly ill-toned, and demonstrated an ability with Anglo-Saxon that I was interested. Yeah. Anyway.
Did you go? I thought you were about to go into a Maggie Smith impression, but it didn't work. It didn't happen.
No. The only thing that goes through my mind with Maggie Smith is, as the Dowager Duchess, she says, "Oh, weekend. What is that? What is a weekend?" and she looks around the room as if it's sort of eluding her.
Yeah. See, that is something I'm familiar. Obviously, I've heard of Maggie Smith, for decades already, but I haven't really seen most of her work. But I'm very familiar with Downton Abbey, and she's so wonderful in that.
Two magnificent things, and in the middle, she got a little bit of Harry Potter. Harry Potter, and but the Harry Potter thing is really a version of the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which is what she did at the beginning, and.
Right. That's the movie that really made her famous, correct?
That made her famous, but I mean, she was in rep in the theatre in Oxford, which I know very well, and I did a certain amount of acting in the theatre in Oxford, and I quite enjoyed it. It's a nice little space, and if you want a space to hone your art, that's a great one, because 600 seat theatre with sort of proper decent professional facilities, good fly tower and stuff. I learned everything I know about theatre from the Playhouse in Oxford. I think. And,
I may have been there. I'm trying to remember because I spent a summer at Oxford.
In Oxford, there's the Playhouse, and then around the corner there's the Apollo or whatever, the new theatre, which it's a much bigger theatre. Today it's really a receiving house.
All right, good. Tim, now I'm going to bang on the table, and we're going to get back to the episode, because otherwise we're going to be here. I do have another show at 9 p.m. tonight. I'm afraid we won't get there if we don't move along. So basically, at the beginning, we see both tribes are hungry. Right, Tina wants Doritos. Right, Tina, remember that person? She did not speak Doritos. She wants her Doritos, but at least she finally spoke.
Yeah,
that was a relief. Yeah, she spoke. Had she been paid by an advertising agent?
The best was she pronounced every syllable of that word. Doritos.
Did she get an endorsement deal with Doritos? Because she should.
She should.
This is not the first. This is not the last time she will talk about Doritos.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Tina and her Doritos is going to be a thing. That's why I flagged it.
I think I prefer that to all the stuff about pigs.
Well, Scoopin wants pork and Tina wants Doritos. So which one is more likely to? Well, I was going to say, it's Survivor. They could always do a reward challenge, but Scoopin wants to kill a pig, right? And we're just going to drop a pin in that for next week, because next week there is certainly blood involved, and so something's going to happen.
I think a pig would require slightly more competence than he's got. So if there is blood involved, probably not.
Oh, you have no idea, my friend.
I can imagine quite a lot of it. I don't know how all those children on the island managed to kill pigs, because it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult even if they're in captivity.
Yeah.
You know.
So we get to the reward challenge, and I did not write down the little poem, but what we see is that it's something where somebody's going to have to hold up a lot of weight, and the prize is some kind of a fishing package, as they call it. We know that they already have hooks, but they were talking about the lack of line, and so they're going to give them line and the nets, and I'm trying to remember what else, but they're going to be able to fish better.
They have some tackle of some sort, I think.
Yeah.
They were quite well provided for. In that little box, yeah. But
I don't know. I
love
love this challenge. So, Bobby, what did you think of this?
Oh, well, first off, when Jeff was first describing the challenge, I was mesmerized by him because I thought he was saying water barrel the whole time, but he was saying it weird. He was saying water bearer. And I was like,
it was water barrel.
I was like, is he from the South? Like, and have this weird slang for barrel? I was like, I could not figure it out. It's like, is he saying barrel?
Water bearer. Right. So just to sort of let people, so you all, if you didn't see the episode, right, basically, since everybody, so one person is going to be kind of the water bearer, and they have to hold up. Others will bring them buckets full of water.
Aquarius.
Yes. Okay.
The water bearer.
Oh, okay.
Notice the difference in my pronunciation, because I don't have an R. R. Sorry.
An R.
And there's lots of R's at the end of that. Water bearer. Is one. I must start learning American.
I know, of course, as Americans, when we see other people doing an American accent, I mean, I don't know about you, Bobby, but my initial reaction is always, well, if you can talk like that, why don't you just do it all the time?
Absolutely. Why did we lose the R? The only word that I can think of where we actually have an R that we can actually identify in British English is arse. And you say ass.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that at all. Mm-hmm. When you've got an opportunity to roll an R, why don't you? Why have you got rid of that? Is that the same thing as oh shoot? I bet it.
When you guys use R, we don't, and then vice versa. When we use R, you don't.
So I just think we need to pool our resources and have a mid-Atlantic accent.
But back to your question about the challenge, I forgot how these challenges work. Like I had seen this season not too long ago, but even just rewatching this episode, I just forgot the style of these competitions and the feel of the competitions, and even the way that they film these competitions. The whole time I was watching it, it was like, this doesn't feel like a competitive challenge like you'd see nowadays. This almost just feels like a bunch of friends goofing around and having a good time. It's
great.
At least, look, they certainly did a better job of filming it than they did with anything in Borneo. They're certainly learning. Correct. We still don't really get the play-by-play, right? Mm-hmm. Which we'll get not too far out, right? Where Jeff will go back either during the challenge and or after the challenge. Yes. Right. He will give them some sound bites that they can edit back into the challenge. But I felt like I knew what was going on. And again, like in Borneo, half the time I had no idea what was going on. So,
the filming was so good in this. You had camera people, I think, standing in the water.
They probably, yes, I'm sure they did.
You never saw them. It was just so well designed.
Yeah, they've gotten very, very good at it. Now, the one thing that they did not do well, yes, they just didn't find a strong enough rod, because what happens was, so one person is the water bearer, and that's Scoopin and Colby. And then everybody else will bring buckets of water. So there's one other person from the tribe that actually balances it, which makes sense, because otherwise you would have, if you had somebody from the other tribe who was placing the barrels, then you would just start, if I were them, I would just put all of them on one side. Right? So to prevent that, they say, okay, somebody from the same tribe will place it. but it's the people from the other tribe that has to bring the water. So it's really, I think it's a very interesting challenge the way they've set it up. And they said, so they got the point that they used up all the barrels. So each of them is holding, 400 pounds. And then Probe says, okay, this is just endurance now. Whoever can hold on to this longer will win. And then Scoopin's bar breaks.
Yep.
Right.
But I think he was about to drop it anyway.
Quite possibly, but that shouldn't happen, right? No. We had a situation thing relatively recently in the most recent season of Australian Survivor, where there was a point where somebody was supposed to grab a rope and like swing across, and the rope broke. Mm-hmm. And the guy fell. Well, it's funny, except that he was a professional surfer and he really messed up his knee, like he needed surgery.
It was really bad.
Yeah. And that was just, again, in terms of when they tested this challenge, right? They just, the rope was not rated for him. I mean, he was a decent sized guy, but he's not a 300 pound guy.
By any means. I feel there were bigger guys out there,
Right. Yeah. So the point is, but they're supposed to, they do test these challenges. They have what they call the dream team, which is, members of production, and they go in, even in terms of planning how they're going to film it, right? Yeah. They take the same number of people with about the same body type or whatever, and they run it to see, again, how long it will take, right? How easy or difficult it is, etc. So they did all that. Maybe they did not really plan for a situation where I think they probably thought that somebody was going to lose long before they ran out of buckets, right? But they did. So once everybody's when they're holding all the buckets, guess what? The staff, the rod wasn't strong enough. But I did find this really interesting that they didn't just do it. It's funny that this happened, given that we just, we just had a restart on this episode. Ourselves in the podcast, because I'm thinking, like, why didn't they just rerun the challenge? Right? I mean, I like the fact that they showed us what actually happened, but I was kind of surprised that they didn't just say, okay, take two, take a few, shake it out, we're going to do this again. That's not what they did. So, and I understand, and I do think Colby would have won. Right. I mean, somebody can be strong without being particularly big, right? Colby is obviously a lot bigger than Scoopin, and I do think that he was probably going to drop it, but he didn't drop it and it broke. So they have to reset. So they do a 5-minute runoff, right? We're going to do a 5-minute version of the challenge, and whoever gets more barrels on their thing before, they win, and Colby wins again, or wins officially. Yes. Sorry.
Bobby, this is a question for Bobby. I think.
Yes, please.
So if you were Greg and you had and this happened, could you possibly have fronted it out and actually finished the game as it finished?
I mean, absolutely.
The rule was whoever drops the things in the water loses.
Exactly, right. And my biggest thing was, did they not have other polls? Like, is that why? Did they not have a backup poll?
You're now going into the rerun and what they actually did.
Well, they must have had another poll. If they didn't have a third poll, they wouldn't have been able to do the 5-minute runoff. So they must have had another poll. They must have had.
That's true.
Of course, they had another poll there, but the issue is, could you have defended the situation as it took place?
I mean, I think that they handled it.
But I understand what Tim is saying, because he said if you drop it, if it falls in the water, you're out, and he's saying that everything fell in the water, right? But in this case, it was so clear; it does not seem to have been his fault. It looks like the poll just gave out.
So given that, Colby, and it would have been the same thing.
Right. And so, so I really can't defend that. I'm glad that they did restart it. It's annoying that they only gave them 5 minutes.
Act of God doesn't matter. This is about survival. It's not about being.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it didn't matter. They still ended up losing. So it's kind of like it happened anyways. Like,
but can you imagine, Tim? But can you imagine how the audience would react to that? Where it would be
apoplectic. It would be hilarious.
They did it for Colby. They wanted to protect the cowboy.
What?
Right. because Colby, it's clear that he's the cowboy. I don't think what happens in this episode, but he will be known as Superman, right? So of course they had to, right? So no, I'm glad that they didn't just say them's the breaks. They actually reran it, and Ogakor wins, right? Colby wins, and then we get, and this is one of those things again where when the editors let us know how they really feel about somebody, because so Ogakor is all celebrating and whooping and yelling, and then they hear Scoopin'. And I had to play this a few times to hear it. He said something, and it was along the lines of, "Let's get out of here. I don't want to hear this." Right? So he lost. He just wants to take his toys, take his tribe, go home. And so that's what happens. We see, Kucha walking out, and Ogakor is still hooping and hollering. So again, it's just like, okay, so you're a poor loser, Scoopin', right? Besides everything else, right?
So even if he'd been given, he was given an extra chance, and even then he was still a poor loser, basically.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, and remember, all this other stuff with the pictures of kids that happened many years later, right? They just hated Scoopin' for himself, right? And so we can separate. It's not like we're going back and we're hating on him because of something that happened later. It was clear that he was already a jerk back when this was filmed.
Yeah.
So that happens. Yeah. So then they go back to camp. Anything else with this challenge?
We would really want in an ideal reality TV world for people to be presented in the best possible light that they can be. And I think that sneaky little edit there.
Well, because I feel like their way of editing, you want to make everybody to look in the best possible light. I think the way that they edit is that they want heroes and they want villains, right? I know that. And so Colby is definitely our hero, so Scoopin' can be our villain.
Not as binary as that. And
I know.
I think we have a duty. If this is a social experiment, we have a duty to present people in the best possible light.
And I would say you have the responsibility to present them in the most accurate, positive possible light. When Scoopin' keeps showing us that he's kind of a jerk, I think that's fine to show that. What do you think, Bobby?
I do. I think that they're also doing it as a way to highlight that he finds himself to be the leader. So if he's the vocal one being like, you know what, we don't want to be here for this, let's go, team. Like, he's the one leading the charge to get out of that situation. I think they're really pushing that narrative of Sculpin's the leader. He's the one who's in charge. He's the one who calls the shots. This is what's going on. Because you don't hear them going from anyone else's perspective like, oh, I don't want to hear them cheering. Let's get out of here. It's only him. Right.
And like you said, so on the one hand, we see that Scoopin' is the leader. Right, but then you have somebody like Varner who says, "Yeah, but he reminds us again. Yeah, but he's an idiot." Right, and so again, when there's a show of bad sportsmanship, that's another way. Again, it's kind of 2 seconds, but you can just get another little jab in.
Exactly, and it's so funny to see Varner like so young and so
Varner, somebody else that we will see much later.
Oh, really?
Yes. Tim, if you had to draw a guess, how many of these people from this cast do you think go on and play again? I have to know.
I would have got. I'm beginning to see characters emerging, and I would think probably something like 80%.
It's not quite that bad, but it's more than half.
It's more than half.
Some of them will come back later. So like I said, there's All-Star season in season 8, and a bunch of them will come back for that. But then there are a few people who will come back much later. Right, for other reasons.
Multiple times.
Right.
Too. So,
but for example, the lady who went out this week,
Mad Dog, Marilyn.
In the space of 3 weeks, she's already a star.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they thought that she might be the star. Pre-season, she was going to be the next Rudy.
Yeah.
She might have gotten more coverage than anybody else before the season. And by the way, I did reach out to her she is on Facebook. I sent her a message. I have not heard back.
No, I'd love to hear
Mad Dog is still around.
It came as a great surprise when that she was voted off.
All right. Well, we'll get there, Tim. Let's go through it in order. Okay.
Sorry.
So no, you're right. That's fine. But let's get to the rest of the stuff, and then of course we will eulogize Mad Dog, who I really do love. So they go back to camp, and Colby. So Colby says, this is great for morale, but we still have to actually catch the fish. Okay, which is a very reasonable reaction. And then we see Mitchell saying, like, why do they have to do this? Why can't they just give us the fish? Right? They're giving us all this stuff. Why don't they just give us the fish?
Yeah, I love it. And what does he do in real life?
He's a singer-songwriter.
That's it. Yes.
And he apparently really does. Because I heard that he was 7 feet tall. But he's really pretty close, because if you see him walking with Colby, I mean, Colby is over 6 feet. Colby's a big guy. And Mitchell is head and shoulders taller than Colby. Right.
I very much enjoyed Mad Dog's rendition of what Lerner Lowe. What was it? No, not Get Me to the Church. On the Street Where You Live. Yeah. And I was surprised that copyright allowed her to do that.
Yeah, that was interesting.
She did it very nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so then they do catch some fish, right? Because Keith finally gets to be a chef again, right? He knows how to gut the fish. He knows how to make fillet fish, and they have a dull knife on top of it, which really does it's hard to fillet fish with a dull knife. It really is. But he was able to pull it off. And then you also have Jerry standing there going, like, why? Because he's going to, like, dredge it in flour. And then you got Jerry going, why do we have to waste the flour? Right. And then we realize everybody else is watching. Right. I'm trying to remember who said this. Somebody said this. But basically, it's that Keith, on the one, Keith is like, I'm a chef again. You need me. And everybody else is like, yeah, we're watching. Now all we know. Now we also know exactly how to gut and fillet a fish. So he's not quite as, irreplaceable as he thinks he is. Right? He just taught all. But now, to be fair, it is hard. It is hard to cook fish. It is hard to fillet fish. Those are two things that are not that easy, and it's way harder out on the island. So it's not as simple as he thinks. Yeah. But people are certainly watching.
I love that observation from Colby. He's just like, we're just trying to take notes so that we can get rid of them and have it all ready to go, and we know what to do. That was a cool little funny moment from Colby, because that's what I remember Colby. That's how I remember him being something, maybe not the wittiest, but he always has a little remark that really just puts a smile on your face, and you're like, how can you not like this guy?
Oh, he's very engaging. Right. He's very engaging.
Yeah, like I said, it's clear already in episode 3 that we're supposed to root for Colby, and it's pretty easy to root for Colby. Right, Colby is Superman. We haven't seen anything negative about him. We see how strong he is. Right, holding up 400 pounds worth of water is not easy. Okay, so then we go to Kucha, and Kucha's talking about so she's responsible for the water. And she's talking about how much work it is, but then nobody really realizes it. And I think that's true. I think it's worth pointing out that, there's just a lot of physical work. I mean, everybody's doing physical work. They're bringing firewood. Everybody's working hard. But water, like we said, like we just saw, water is heavy. And she says the minute she brings water back, like it's gone. Right? Everybody fills their canteens, and it's like, okay, Kenny, time to do it again. So, again, just put a pin in that. Right? She is fine. Sorry?
Where did she get the water from?
So they have a well, right? Each tribe does have a well, but it's very like brackish water. It has to be boiled.
Right.
So you have to go to the well, get the water, right?
Why don't they use the water from the river?
Well, she said that they do get it from the river as well. Like I think back in those days, they got it from, I think, maybe multiple sources. I don't know exactly, but I know that they do get it from the river, because Rob has talked about that on his season. Right,
because it's so much, because it's also so much closer. Right, I'm assuming that the well water, and they always do this in Survivor, right, that it's fairly safe, even though they want them to boil it. Right, in fact, generally it's okay. Whereas that river water, but if the water in the well looks just like the water in the river, then I understand the idea about let's just take the water out of the river, so at least you don't have to schlep it all the way back from the well. But even then,
the river, then it's the same thing, isn't it? You're just boiling water.
It could be. It's true. I'm saying I don't know if the water in the well really as brackish as the river water. It could have been.
Probably be at less risk of actually, getting contaminated water if it's coming from the well.
Right. That's what I'm saying, is that they generally, it can be unpleasant, but it generally, the well water will not be dangerous. Whereas, and it's possible that, again, with the river water, that if you just boil it, it's fine. But they are supposed to get the water from the well. But either way, so even if you get it from the river, you still have to boil it, right? And then you have to fill up all the canteens. And then, like I said, she feels like she doesn't get a break because it's time to do it again. Right. And given how hot it is and how dry it is and everything, I do believe that she might not be exaggerating, right? This just kind of might be what she does all day long.
And they're really pushing this narrative of Kimmy as a hard worker,
Right, because there was some stuff last episode that made her look not so great, where she wouldn't eat the brains or whatever. So now I think they're trying to show us that at least she is a hard worker.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it Nick who made the seat?
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get there in a minute.
So you've got this contrast between the hard worker and the lazy oaf.
Right.
Who may not be that much of a lazy oaf. He's just sort of decided he's going to conserve his energy and sit around. Right. Having made his seat, he'll lie in it.
Right. Well, again, that'll come up a little bit later, but we definitely are going to talk about it. The other thing we saw was they're talking about Kentucky Joe. Okay, Kentucky Joe is the nickname for Roger. Right. And Alicia says, I like Roger very much. And Alicia said he's not great in challenges, but he's very comfortable. Again, he has a lot of outdoor knowledge.
But they finished, and they won. So although he tripped up a few times.
Right. No, but this was even before this challenge, though. I'm saying that Alicia's saying before that challenge already that he's a little bit slow in challenges. But she's actually saying, like, they like to have him around. She's not saying we should vote him off right now. Because even though he's not the best in challenges, he brings a lot of other, skills too. And then we see this little thing, and again, I'm going to stick a pin in this, because when they tell us things like this, they tend to be important. When Roger finds this, so when they're trying to come up with like different ways to to fish, and so Roger finds this little rock that I guess he was going to use as, I don't even know what they call it in fishing, where you kind of put a weight on the line so that it'll drop to the bottom. I'm forgetting the word, but anyway, but he found this little heart. He gives it to Elizabeth, and he says, "Take that and give it to your boyfriend when you see him." And then she says something like, it's clear that she's never going to write his name down.
Yeah,
right. They don't say it in so many words, but it's clear that they are getting close.
Yeah, you really start to see the relationship forming with Elizabeth Hasselbeck and Roger, or soon to be Hasselbeck. Excuse me. Right. Yeah, but yeah, it's their relationship's awesome. I'm sorry?
They're going to be linked.
Well, they already are. You see Roger and Elizabeth, and they're on the same tribe. I'm saying, and he gives her this little heart-shaped rock, and she talks about how much she likes him. So that certainly tells us, again, the fact that this is included in the episode means that it's important.
And Hasselbeck's not his last name. It's someone else who's eventually becomes her husband. He's a pro football player. So this is down the line. So I'm just
it turns out actually, but I think I said this on Twitter. I'm not sure if I said this on the pod before. I found out that actually Elizabeth was already dating Tim Hasselbeck when she went on Survivor.
Was she?
I thought that it was like that, she's, because of the exposure on Survivor, she snagged a pro athlete. Right, which has happened other times. Okay,
but she's knowing the job.
right. But in terms of the boyfriend, yes, they were already dating. They met at Boston College. Tim Hasselbeck becomes a pro football player, and a very successful pro football player.
Her brother-in-law was better, but
right, but still pretty good.
Yeah.
So then we see Tina and Mad Dog have bonded. Right, they're having a conversation about how much they like each other. And I was thinking, this will never happen in Modern Survivor, because you would never see a tribe with more than one woman over the age of 40. Right? It just does not happen.
Really?
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you get one old person per tribe, max. Yeah. So, but they have bonded. Now, again, I checked this. I looked this up. So Mad Dog, I think, was 52 when she played, and Tina was around 40 or 41. So they're not that different in age, but I think Mad Dog is certainly portrayed as being older. I mean, she's about a decade older. But I just want to flag it again in terms of representation, because just like it's hard to be the only Black person or the other person of color on a tribe, it's also hard to be the only person in your age group. Right. And if you want older women to do better on Survivor, maybe you want to put more of them into the game. Because when you are the one old woman, then guess what? You normally get to go home first.
It was crazy to see how much older this cast skewed opposed to what we'll see in today's game, you know, outside of an all-star season or, you know, Winners at War. It's crazy. You don't ever get these kind of numbers of, you know, people over the age of, let's say, 30.
30, right? It's not even, you know, having people in their 50s and 60s and 70s.
Oh,
there was
30 now. I'm 31.
You will definitely never have two people over the age of 40 on a starting tribe. It just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Bobby, what would you play?
What do I play?
Would you play?
Oh, would I play? Yeah. Oh, I mean, I would play in a heartbeat. I have talked about this on Rob Has a Podcast. I have actually made it to the semifinals for Big Brother before, and I've auditioned for Survivor. I think only once or twice. I definitely would have a harder time with Survivor, with the whole survival aspect, even though it's probably more my speed. But Big Brother has always been my passion. I've wanted to get on my entire life. So
what's the process for applying for Big Brother?
So you can either send in a tape or you can go to the live audition. I have literally done all the research that even like Dan Giesling has put out there and other people have put out there. My favorite thing to do would be to go to an open casting call, or you can get scouted or whatever it's called as well. They do that as well. Obviously, that's not going to ever happen to me, but I did go to the open casting call, and I just went and said, I'm going for it. I don't care. I'm going to go all in, and I had the people in my group because it was a group of about 7 of us. They did groups of people would each meet with the casting director. And I met with my casting person. There was a group of 7 of us, and they just really quickly, they want to, you know, get to the point. Who would you target in this group? Who do you think you would be aligned with? Blah, 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 blah. And every single person pointed at me for an alliance member and stuff like this because I was just trying to be so over the top, so extra. You know, I was still me, but I was me times 1,000, which is what they always say to do. And so I wanted to convey a self-confidence and then also a self-awareness of, I know I can win this. I know I could be the best to ever play. And that got me to the semifinals. Unfortunately, I think this was Big Brother 17. I think some other people ended up taking that spot, but I was just happy to get as far as I did. And maybe one day I'll be able to get back.
In the semi-final selection, do you have to change your gameplay here a little bit more?
So one thing I studied up on was that they want you to not be on the fence about anything. So if you're a Republican, I'm all in on Republican. If I'm a Democrat, I'm all in on Democrat. It doesn't matter what you are. You can't just be like, you know, I'm not a huge fan of politics, you know, but I would say I'd go this way. No, that's not going to work. They want someone controversial. They want someone that's going to be opinionated, and they want someone that's going to be extra. And I did that. There was one thing that she kind of slipped me up on that I look back on, and I'm just like, could have done better there. And I think that might be what cost me. But it was more so, it was a different guy.
What was it?
It was just some stuff that I may have like, because I told her that I would probably side myself as more Republican. And I didn't put it like that. I said, oh, I'm hardcore, even though I'm not. But she asked me some things about it to kind of challenge me. And like I said, I'm not like hugely Republican by any means. I do skew more that side, even though I don't like our president. I just think that there were some things that I wasn't as familiar with that I feel like I could have done better. I could have known more about that. She definitely tried to challenge me on. But I just wanted to be so like, definitely like, I'm this.
But you're still right, though. That is right. That is the way. And especially, like you said, because you get so little time, sometimes you get, 15 to 30 seconds initially. Exactly. And then you just have to decide, is this somebody that we want to spend more time on or not?
And it's definitely intimidating because when you get to the semifinals, you're in front of a camera. It's just you and them, and the camera's rolling, and you better be ready to go. And I'm not saying I wasn't, or I say I didn't have a chance to be that. I think that's definitely something that if I could redo it, this is what I would have done. You know, you play that.
But then it's also about who else they have already cast, right? Do they already have somebody like you? And I'm assuming that's what. So who do you think was playing your part?
Probably either Steve or Johnny Mac, somewhere in that area. I think that those two are so boldly their brand that maybe
So they already had two. They already had two super fans. Is the point?
Yeah.
They weren't going to take a third one.
Yeah, and I did apply again for season 20, but this time when I went to the live audition, Robin Cass was the one who was interviewing me, and say I wasn't intimidated.
Yeah,
That's the head of
head of casting,
and you know her. Yeah, so when you think Robin Cass, you think the head of casting. You're this, and so she was in on it. So I was just intimidated, and you can't be intimidated in those situations. You have to take the bull by the horns and run with it. And I wanted it to be my opportunity, but I went in there with, this is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this person out so that it looks like I'm controversial, because that's one thing Dan Kiesling said.
So Dan Kiesling is somebody who's won Big Brother, and he has put out a lot of resources in terms of how to get cast on Big Brother.
And what would be the difference between the casting approach for Big Brother and the casting approach for Survivor?
I think the casting is pretty similar, isn't it?
Similar.
Different people, but the same basic structure.
So there's two different structures for casting, and they do this all over the place. So unless you're in like New York or LA, the casting process, if you go to a casting call, is in front of a producer. If you're not, like I went to one in San Diego for season 20, that one's just your local television crew videotaping you for a minute segment, and they're going to send in your tape. That's it. Those ones, in my opinion, are worthless. They're a waste of your time. You could just do it at home and probably do it better.
But if you go in New York or LA, you're saying that's when you can meet somebody like Robin Cass, and then it's worth it.
The ones that it's in front of an actual casting director, they can see you. They can see the person you are. They have that visual, and you can really show everything you want to be. And that's where I've had the most success. I mean, granted, I've never been on the show. I've been on any reality show, but the dream is to do Big Brother or Survivor, and hopefully one of these days those dreams come true. I will say this real quick. For this last season, for what we thought was going to be Big Brother 22, it was right when COVID started happening, is when the casting call was going to be in LA. And I got up and got everything ready at 6 a.m. to go drive, an hour and a half to LA. And then I'm glad I looked, because first thing I saw was, hey, we're actually going to cancel the thing today out of fear of COVID. It was like, if they would have done it the weekend before, I would have gone.
Oh, you were all ready to go out. Oh, that's
right when everything started shutting down is when they did that. So I was like, this is my last chance before the baby. I was going to have one last summer to try.
But that's exactly why I think that they went with it.
You'll go on the circle with the baby.
Exactly. Right. That's the next one.
It's been done. It's been done.
To the circle too. So we'll see. Not this one.
Then you could genuinely be Sammy.
Exactly.
And people would love it. Your dad, and it's not even you're a single dad. There's a mom, but you're, rather than just leaving the baby at home, you're going to bring the baby. People would eat it up. People would eat it up.
I think sorry, that was my whole casting adventure.
In the first series, I had a baby. And the lady who brought the baby went early, but I think the problem was that she and the baby find it very hot.
Oh, really?
I heard that it was very hot in there. That's why they had fans everywhere, right?
Oh, wow. And in the second year, I was very, very conscious of my cat being hot, and so I did everything I could to make sure that he was comfortable, which meant I had more fans than anybody else in the show. Right.
But see, this shows there's all these little things that you can't see in the finished product, but can have a huge influence on what happens.
Huge. But the thing is, if you knew you were going to be in this in this overheated environment, you can prepare for it, I think. So certainly, if I knew somebody who was planning on doing something like that, I would say, well, spend the summer, don't open any windows, practice, and I think small children particularly adapt to change very, very comfortably, and I think a small child would enjoy Particularly a toddler would enjoy something like the circle. If you, I mean, you wouldn't be playing with the other team members. That would be the side issue for you,
Right.
and you would be playing for your daughter, and it would be delightful television. And in many ways, the reason I think I survived the circle was because I was playing with Bay all the time. I was constantly focused on him.
And that actually helped your game, you think, because you had to think about him.
And it helped my sanity as well. You know, because there's not enough, you don't have enough access to these other people to form a really close bond with them. As you know, you've got to spend, you've got to focus on your time alone. And I wasn't alone. I was never alone. I always had Kat. And as it would be a lovely to make that relationship work. And it also means you don't have to speak to yourself.
Right. Rather than just speaking to the camera, you can speak to the cat or the baby or a turtle, right? A turtle has been
the turtle. Well, the turtle was easy because the turtle is just simply something to interact with. And I think the turtle had a fan page at one point.
Yes, it did.
I wish you could take.
Bay must have had a fan page, no?
Well, I've never I think I vaguely found it eventually, but there didn't seem to be very many fans there. And somebody told me Bay got this astronomical fan page. I never found that. But the Bay still walks around the place. I mean,
he is a Siamese. They think that it's all that even before you put them on television. So
yeah, well, he really does think that he is God's gift. And it's got quite difficult. If I now I have a second cat and a much older cat who's sort of definitely in the first stages of Alzheimer's. But I've given her a lot of attention recently, and she's rediscovered the inside of my cardigan.
Oh, she's doing a little bit better. I'm glad to hear it.
So I sit and work, and she sort of snuggles in there, and I don't think she's quite worked out who I am.
Okay, but she likes you.
But she's rediscovered that sort of thing which she had as a child. You know, she had a very difficult sort of childhood because she had a disease from her owner. She had ringworm, and she got shaven, and then she lived in my dressing gown pocket for a while, and then she sort of come out of the pocket like a kangaroo, and come up into the cardigan, and so that became her place. And I think she finds that comfortable, and she can go for quite a long time in there. But I think that makes Bay jealous. So every so often now we find little presents from Bay in the bathroom and on the staircase. And you think, oh, Bay, why? And he's very good on vomiting on cue as well. He didn't do any vomiting in the circle because he had so much attention.
Oh, but when he's not getting attention, then he starts vomiting.
Yep.
I wonder if that's what's going on with mine, because the vet says there's nothing wrong with her. She just eats too fast. But I'll have to watch and see if she does that at a time when she wants attention.
The cardigan, knit a cardigan, which has got a special pouch for her, and I'm sure she'll be only too happy.
Well, first we'll do the scarf, and then I haven't actually knit any actual. No, Tim knows I'm making. Everybody gets scarves from me, so I'm making a scarf for Tim. It'll be a while, but when I get to the point that I can make a cardigan, I can certainly add a cat-sized pocket.
Absolutely.
So back.
You're soon going to have these things around your neck, aren't you? And you're going to be carrying your daughter around.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not scoobs, are they? What are they called?
Oh,
people call them
my head. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to use a baby Bjorn.
Bjorn. Yeah. It's I honestly, we have the baby shower this weekend, so we're gonna see what we get and then go shopping. So
good plan. Okay, so we see Jerry and Colby are flirting. We saw some of that last week. We see much more of it now. Keith says that Jerry is attracted to Colby, but it's also game. Colby's aware of that. And then Jerry also said, yeah, I would absolutely vote him off. So they're both game players. I think, there is some attraction, but...
They're both very good looking.
Oh, yeah.
They make a very attractive couple. You can see the camera loves them both. And that scene where they were both lying in the water.
And it's always concerning when one person is really all in and they don't realize that it might be game. They both know this is game, right? And so they got to flirt with each other and play with each other, and that's fine. Keeps everybody occupied.
And I have one question for you: chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin?
Oh, always right about that.
Is this me?
Yes. Well, that's the question. Jerry, he says chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin.
Oh yes.
So what's your preference, Tim?
Well, I don't think I really like either.
I'm not a fan of either.
How can you not like chocolate chip cookies?
I'm not a big chocolate chip guy.
Really. It's really strange. Though I have found, I pushed myself, and I've now discovered I quite like brownies.
I like brownies.
I find it very questionable to actually give them that name, because I always thought a brownie was something that you were very proud of when you were little. And,
brownie points.
Well, yeah, you do get brownie points, absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, you sort of.
Well, you're both wrong. I mean, chocolate chip cookies are delicious, and oatmeal raisin can be pretty good too. Although
I love
chocolate,
raisins, and I love oatmeal. But,
I'm white chocolate macadamia nut or snickerdoodle. Those are my two go-tos.
Oh my God, white chocolate! Isn't white chocolate spectacular?
Oh,
but
it's the best.
My partner's a nut man, but I'm really not. Except marzipan. Oh my God, almond. Hey.
I don't get marzipan.
Really? Well, if somebody gives it to you, just stick it in an envelope and send it on to me.
Okay. Noted.
I could live on the stuff. Live on it. And I make it myself as well.
Oh, nice. All right, then you can send that to me.
Yeah.
My thing basically is, if something doesn't have chocolate in it, it's probably not worth the calories. It's not that I dislike other things, but like I said,
chocolate all round marzipan. That is like sort of sweet heaven, really.
For me, chocolate just is too plain by itself. It needs like a caramel, or it needs something else to it. Like I'm fine with it, but yeah.
So what was your go-to confectionery thing when you were little?
Oh, snickerdoodles, for sure.
So peanut twist.
It's more like cinnamon sugar. So
a snickerdoodle is not exactly the same thing as a Snickers bar.
No, it's a snickerdoodle is a cookie that it's a cinnamon sugar. And I had a babysitter who still to this day, growing up, made, I don't even know if she's still around, to be honest with you, but she had the best snickerdoodles I think I'll ever have in my life, and I used to get them every week, so that's always been my thing.
Oh, okay.
I was a nanny when I
actually you were?
I was actually a nanny. Yeah, I was Mary Poppins.
Really? Okay, got to hear this.
Doubtful by that stage, but I was a nanny for a 5-year-old girl. It was wonderful. So I know all about little girls, and it's sort of it's so fascinating to play that role.
You know what? Also, I really am glad that you were able to do that, because I think a lot of people, especially if the child is a girl, right, and their nanny is a guy, some people would be leery of that, which is, I think, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh,
but the parents were open-minded enough.
Yeah.
And I could see that you could be wonderful with children. You're kind of like a large child yourself sometimes. So. No, but I mean, in a great way. Kids love that.
5-year-old girls, you're going to discover this, Bobby, are very opinionated.
Oh, I'm excited to find out.
And I remember this girl stood at the top of the stairs one day, and she said, folded her arms, she said, "We do love you, Tim, even though you are a bit strange." You've got it in one.
I will say this: I can imagine Tim as like a Miss Doubtfire with the cream all over his face. Hello.
No, I knew that you could do a wonderful Mrs. Doubtfire. I did not know that you actually did that in your. It's so funny.
And I did breakfast in the mornings and taking.
So this is Tim. This is Tim's next show. Obviously, we have to find a child or a group of children
you can borrow mine.
Yes.
going to ballet.
Yes.
And her slightly older brother, I ended up tutoring him. So that was my introduction to teaching as well. And all this while I was doing my finals, and sort of getting on the bike and racing into Oxford to go to tutorials, always slightly late. And my bike had no brakes, and this house was at the top of a quite a big hill.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to go down this hill at breakneck speed, and there was a road, there was a crossing at the end of the hill. And how I didn't kill myself, I don't know. But my only form of brake was to stick my feet on the road and sort of go through, which I did.
It does not sound terribly safe.
I also had quite a long scarf which used to flow out behind me. So there was an option for an Isadora Duncan moment at any point.
You have to be careful though, because if that scarf gets stuck in the spokes
Isadora
on the wheels, yep.
Duncan, that's it. You see, yep. And the first play that I did a front cover for when it was published was a play about Isadora Duncan. So and more than that, when I go to Russia, the house I stay in, the little flat I've got there, or at least had there, was on the site of the house of Sergei Yesenin, who was this great poet in Russia who married Isadora Duncan. It was a bit of a disaster because he didn't speak English, she didn't speak Russian, he was also gay. So I think there were many problems. There were many problems facing that marriage.
Just a few. Yeah. So then we get to, so now we get Jeff and Alicia talk about a Final Four. And then now we get to the Nick is lazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So he built a chair and he built a kitchen and he built, I don't know what else. Right. But he's lazy because he doesn't want to do anything else.
He doesn't want to be seen doing anything else. He wants to be seen building the kitchen. But I mean, he managed quite a few things that actually worked. And I think your fellow who's going in for the pig sticking stuff, I mean, he does posturing, but he doesn't actually seem to do that much that works, does he?
Right. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but I just had to flag it because we had this in Borneo, right? That Ramona was lazy, when she was sick. Right. Yeah. And then Jervis actually was lazy and kind of prided himself on that. So I'll give them that one. But now it's season 2. And guess what? The black guy is lazy again.
I was going to say, are you saying there's a racist bias here?
I think there might be. And especially with Nick. Okay. I don't know Nick, but Nick not only went to Harvard Law School, he was on the law review. Okay. In order to get the kind of grades to do that, he works extremely hard when he is in school.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's very, very hard. I never made law review. Okay. Yep. So this is not a lazy guy, and this will happen again over and over and over again, that the black person is the lazy person. So really? I do just have to flag it. Now he does seem he doesn't really want to do much else. And there are other things that are more important. I think Kimmy is right on this, right? It's more important to have firewood than it is to have a kitchen, right? But I don't think it's as simple as just saying, oh, he's lazy.
And I think there also might be a social aspect to this too. He might not be the most, welcomed person or a beloved person in this tribe. So that can also correlate to laziness, not to interact.
Wasn't he also humiliated in the first episode for not being able to read the compass?
A bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I actually met Nick in person. Was probably when this season came out, I was in 6th grade. Okay, that's how long ago it has been. But I think I was in.
I had 3 children, but anyway, yeah.
When I was in 7th grade, I went on a trip with my parents to Seattle, and sure enough, he was right there in the airport. And we went up to him, ran up to him. We're like, oh my gosh, we remember you from Survivor. I think he was exactly like what you see on the show, kind of quiet, kind of melancholy, just kind of, did his thing, took a picture and left. But I will always remember that because I was like, this guy seems like he's exactly like how I thought he was on the show. Like, that's something I've always had in the back of my head.
It tends to be true. It's very hard to be somebody else for 39 days. Eventually it comes out.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think it's so nice. It's so nice that you go up to people and say, hello, I saw you on the telly. Because I think, it's just such as somebody who receives this, it gives me a bit of a buzz to be able to sort of say hello. As somebody who's been watching them, I just think, so much nicer than the thing I hate, and one always knows it's happening, is the people who are standing on the other side of the street staring at you and trying. Is that him? Is that him?
Right.
Just come over and say hello.
Exactly.
And
and a lot of people, I think they don't want to intrude, and so a lot of people really but
I can see them staring.
But when I was a kid, I could get away with it pretty easily.
No, but I look, personally, I think it's fine, especially you're in a place like an airport, you're in a public place and you're not, right.
Anyway,
right. No, but I'm saying, but I personally don't have a problem with it. Like I said, if the person doesn't want to interact, you say, hey, I loved you on Survivor, and like, that's it. And then if they want to engage, they can. Yeah. But I do think a lot of people are hesitant, and I have none of that hesitancy. And that's why
I think maybe in a few years' time, you sort of think, oh, this is getting irritating or something. I can't imagine it would happen, really. I think something else would have to happen. You get some.
I would think it might be more irritating at the beginning, where like you can't go anywhere without being mobbed. Whereas even now, a year out more or less, and like it probably happens infrequently enough that it's actually it's fun, and it's not as if you can't do your shopping.
I was going to say, Tim, did it ever get to that point for you?
No. There was a point where there were a few times when it was a bit difficult going down a street, and particularly in London, without people stopping me. I just realized that's my job.
You signed up for it,
and people. That's one bit of the job I think is really it's very easy to do. And you see immediately that you've changed somebody's day.
As I say, are people rude, or are they, for the most part, really nice? I mean, you had such a great edit and everything too, because you're such a great guy. So it's kind of hard to not like you.
Nobody's ever been rude to me in the street. I'm sure people are probably fairly rude about me behind my back.
Oh no! How could you be rude? It's you. It's Tim, Professor Tim.
What is so fascinating is a lot of my old students have got in touch.
Oh really?
Stuff, and they say,
that's nice.
And I can sort of, they in some of the schools I've taught at, I know people used to call me Santa, or Prof Santa. And now they've got sort of license to do that to my face, and I
you would make a wonderful Santa, Tim.
I've been Santa a few times.
I think we talked about this last time when I was on too, about the Santa.
But the point is, because you're a people person, and so you love to meet people, and I think most people who go on these shows are like that. Right. To me, I feel differently. If I see what I would call, a real quote unquote famous person walk down the street, if I see this A-list actor or whatever, I'm not going to bother them because I know they don't want to be bothered.
Yes.
But if somebody who's been on a reality show where they're a regular person, they have this experience of getting on a show,
exactly.
I find that most people enjoy the attention.
Yeah.
And like I said, if they don't, so I tend to reach out to people. If they don't want to talk, they don't want to talk. Like I said, I reached out to Mad Dog. It would have been great she doesn't want to talk, fine. But I'm going to reach out. That's just always been me.
Yeah.
But so you get someone like Judi Dench. Judi Dench is famous for being somebody else.
Right.
And so she when you see Judi Dench, that's not who you go up to.
Right.
Though I think occasionally people like to hear how wonderful they are. Nobody likes to be criticized, and I don't think that's our job. Our job is to say is to look for all the positive things. But yeah, some old fart like me, who was themselves, that's what you see, so that's what you get. So I think one shouldn't pause. I think you're quite right. That's what we sign up to.
And also living in Southern California down here, you'll run into someone pretty famous, almost not super often, but it at least happens a couple times a year. You see someone, or you go out to dinner.
Hey, Bobby.
Yeah, it's kind of, you get numb to it at a certain point, Yeah.
I've never been numb to that. I'm coming over to California immediately.
It's not. But sometimes it's not like a big name person. There'll be someone you recognize. Oh, I saw that person in a commercial, or it's something.
Right. That's the thing, right? The more famous they are, the less likely I would do it. But the last time I was in LA, or one of the frequent times I was in LA, so I was in Dry Bar. I was getting my hair blown out. I was in town for a Survivor finale. And of course, now I'm going to forget her name, but she was the waitress on Airplane. Julie something. Anyway, I'm waiting in Dry Bar. I'm waiting my turn. And I see this woman, and I know exactly who she is, right? So she's somebody who was in a big movie, 20 years ago, but she's basically a character actress. And so again, I went up and we got a picture and all that. And the people said to me, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You're not supposed to bother them. And again, like I said, if it was, Dame Judy, I wouldn't bother her. But I was correct in that this woman clearly loved being recognized.
Yeah.
Right. And she was the one who actually said, oh, let's get a picture. Right. So again, I feel you kind of read the room. Right. But if the person is open to it, then go for it.
Yeah. I think, if you've got an opportunity to make somebody's day, you make somebody's day. And I just think it sort of lifts. It lifts you as well. You feel better for doing it. You feel it's such a small thing. You can make a contribution to general happiness, and that's great.
And there's one time I went to dinner with some of my friends that we happened in Malibu, and we walked into this place, and Gerard Butler was in the back with his family. They sat like 2 tables away from us, and there was like no one in this place except for us and them.
Right.
But even though it was a small crowd and there was like 5 of us and 5 of them, we didn't want to bug him because he was with this family, And when he walked by, we were like, we love 300, something like that.
Right. So that's what I would say is as I was leaving the restaurant, just I love your work. Right. But don't intrude.
And I think with reality TV stars, it's a little different. It's more so they signed up for this. They knew, not to say A-list actors didn't sign up for it, but they're a little less known that maybe it might even make their day to be recognized.
I think they do. That's my point, is the kind of people who try out for reality TV shows are the kind of people who love being recognized, especially once their 15 minutes of fame are over. Right. Once their season is over or whatever, and nobody's recognized them anymore, then they probably love being recognized.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hesitate to say that I didn't volunteer for this thing.
That's what you were, but you agreed, and you seem to know that what would result, right? Because you weren't on the first season.
Because I think it's the same thing. I did sign up and I did volunteer for political work, and I think it's basically the same thing. So if I bumped into Tony Blair in the street, I would say hello to him, and I'm sure he'd be only too delighted to say hello to me. Mrs. May, I'd walk across the other side of the street. Mr. Trump. Well, did you know that in Yorkshire, the word Trump? Oh, how wonderful! The word Trump is really another is a synonym for flatulence, which I think sort of sums things up, doesn't it? Isn't that great? Can we see your dog?
This is Bear.
Bear. Hi, Bear.
Say hi, Bear.
Is it a boy or a girl?
He's a boy. Mama just left, so she had to go run errands. So if I don't hold him, he will cry because he's attached to her hip.
So he's a miniature dachshund.
He's a Chihuahua / I think Min Pin. So
really?
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what we think he is. We're not 100% sure, but he's a brat and very sweet at the same time.
Aww.
So he will just sit here in my lap so he doesn't make noise.
That's totally fine. So let's go to the immunity challenge. So before that, we just see that they had a bad night with rain. They talk about how unpleasant it is. And then they're really afraid about losing their fire, right? Because again, it's got to be, we hear this from all these people who played, but I'm sure that the level of unpleasantness, right, doesn't get any higher than the middle of the night. It's pouring rain. You're cold, right? You have no dry clothing. It's got to suck, and nobody's getting any sleep. And they saw us on both tribes. We see that everybody's unhappy. Then we go and then we get the tree mail, and it says this is going to be the hardest challenge yet, right? Because just when they're all flagging, this is the perfect time to give them the hardest physical challenge in Survivor history. And up to that point, that probably was true.
Really? It didn't look that hard, really.
No, but it's hard. But if you think about the other challenges, it's it might be less taxing. I don't know. And also, look, they've set it up by telling us how drag, but it looks like it's hard. And certainly if you haven't slept and you haven't eaten, I think I would have a rough time with it.
And also with the challenge, with the way Survivor was back then, I do feel like it was a much harder game. I think that depending where they're at, the conditions were tougher. The food was far more scarce. I'm not saying they give them cheeseburgers on the side nowadays.
But they get a lot, but they get more.
They definitely get a lot more rice and beans than they ever got back then.
The real survival aspect, the real survival aspect of it has pretty much been taken out of the equation. But in the early seasons, it really was a thing.
Yeah, I think it just deteriorates the people too much. Like, they're already going to wear down because of lack of food and stuff. We still see it in today's episodes. What's that?
Mitchell, I think, is the person who's discussing exactly this issue.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and that's why I said he is 7 feet tall and he weighs 100 pounds. So I'm not surprised that he's having a hard time.
Yeah.
Right. So they go into this challenge, and again, so it's basically, it's an obstacle course. It's physical, it's flexibility, it's teamwork. Oh, and then by the way, the other thing is you're all going to be tied together, right?
Oh yes.
So that's what makes it interesting. And so we see, again, we don't have the play-by-play, but we see, Colby is kind of pushing and pulling Mad Dog around, and other people are pushing and pulling Roger around. Right, they've both fallen up, and they have to be. But in the end, Kucha wins. It's very, very close. Right, we really do see them in the same frame. Because we talked about this. Often we wonder, like they try to make it look close, but they were 10 minutes apart. In this case, clearly, it was right down to the wire. Right, and Kucha wins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though Roger is falling over.
Right. Well, they both fell over, but I guess but Kucha was just a little bit whatever.
I thought he was going to die at the end of that.
I was slightly puzzled about which group won, because I need to be color coded.
Like I said, they do better. They do better as Survivor history goes on in terms of doing the play-by-play and making sure we really understand. But yes, in the end, so Kucha won. Ogakor has to go to tribal council, and Colby tells us before they go that it's either going to be Mad Dog, Mitchell, or Keith. Which makes sense because those are the people that they've shown us that there's a reason that they would go home. And I say it makes sense in the sense because that's the way the show is edited, right? If
so
after all of this, sorry,
why did Jerry get voted?
Because they've said that Jerry does have some, especially with Keith, right? That they have had some back and forth. Yeah. There's been a little bit of friction. And I think we've seen other people. I think Colby has said something. She's starting to get on people's nerves.
Right.
Right.
I've got a great question, real quick. What is your opinion, Tim, on Jerry? What do you think of her? Because I want to see how that's gonna. It's maybe too early, but I want to see how that's gonna compare and contrast to how the American public and the world public felt about Jerry back in 2001.
Yeah.
Well,
she hasn't given us much yet. It's hard.
It might be early. It might be early.
I don't
think very much. She hasn't emerged as a character.
Okay. So we're not there yet. Yeah, she will.
In my mind, except as a sidekick to Colby.
Then let's put a pin in that till later down the season, because I'm very interested to see your take and see how it compares to how America felt about her back in 2001.
Very interesting. It's like a medical test. We have to come back and have a opinion a bit later.
Exactly.
So they all go to tribal, and this happens sometimes, but it really does seem to be sincere. They all seem to like Marilyn quite a lot, right?
So why did they vote for her?
Because early in the game, you want to keep the tribe strong, right? And I would say that if she had not been there and somebody who was 30 years old had been there instead, they probably would have won, right? Because the fact that Colby was not in the front. The way they did it was Keith is in the front and Colby was in the back, and it was clear that Colby's job was to just keep poking Marilyn. Right. So the idea is that if once they get rid of her, it is true that if the tribe now sans Marilyn was to run that same obstacle course, they'd be a whole lot faster. So as much as I hate the fact that they always vote out the old people, right, and the women, from a tribe standpoint, it does make sense for them as a group to want to stay strong.
It seemed to me that Roger was a significantly more.
Right, but Roger's on the other tribe.
Yeah, I know. Roger was more of an impediment than Marilyn was.
Right, but they were able to win despite that.
win despite that. So the point was they couldn't manage Marilyn.
Right. Right. If you want to, yes, I can understand what you're saying with it. But like I said, but the basic idea about voting her off rather than somebody else, it's clear that everybody likes her. Nobody has anything bad to say about her. It's just that somebody has to go home. And they really, and like I said, whatever the bit of conflict we've seen between Colby and Jerry, same thing. Colby obviously is very, very good in challenges, and there's no reason. And Jerry's probably also decently good in challenges. And so when you got to send somebody home, it's not going to be one of them. So unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to Mad Dog. At some point, Colby does say, he says, it's sad when Mad Dog goes. And sometimes you get things like this and it's like, oh, seriously, not stop. But in this case, I really do think the tribe probably was sad. They all like her, right?
Who would you have sent home, Karen?
Sorry?
Who would you have
I
sent?
would have sent her home. I would have sent Mad Dog home.
And Bobby, who would you have sent?
I'm kind of on the fence because I feel like more people enjoyed Mad Dog more than they enjoyed Mitchell. So I would have been more
on the fence, Bobby. You've done your Big Brother thing. You have to on one side or the other.
Right. I probably lean more towards Mitchell because he seems the most angst in the group. He seems like the one who's always complaining about everything. Right. So why keep that person there if they don't want to be there?
And he's not amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's replacement level, at least in challenges. It's not like he's great at it.
Yeah.
Right? So Rick Mitchell, my point is that like somebody like Jerry, who you could see that somebody might want to vote out, or Keith or whatever, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Now, the one thing I do have to flag, so we get the votes. So Tina's voting confessional, right, where she basically says, look, this has nothing to do with you, right, but I made a promise to somebody else. Right. And this is just so Mario Lanza in his book, he actually flags this episode, and it's kind of a 2-episode arc for this episode and the episode we're going to talk about next week. But in terms of stone cold a move, right? Because it's early in the game. And this is Tina, who was the sweet little nurse, right? She weighs 95 pounds, and we see in this episode that Tina Wesson is a stone cold killer. And if you didn't see it, I'll flag it for you now. Because, so first of all, they have that voting confessional where she's like, I love you, but I got to do what I got to do. And then they're reading the votes. Okay. And so in the end, right, so Keith votes for Mitchell. So I guess, he's hearkening back to what Bobby said. It also made me wonder if he's on the outs. Is it possible that nobody is telling him that the vote is for Mad Dog? And then Jerry votes for Mad Dog. And I think, and somebody who voted for Keith, right? Jerry voted for Keith, right? Or anyway, but basically everybody else voted for. I'm sorry, my brain fart. But basically, Mad Dog goes home, and then when they're reading the votes, there is this point where they get to the last vote and they're showing Mad Dog, and she's sad and she picks up her bag and she goes, and then they cut to Tina, and Tina is just kind of staring, right? And then they go back to Mad Dog.
Who gets Mad Dog's hat? Is that Tina?
I'm assuming it's Tina. I would have to go back and see the next episode. But but they were very close. And yet, even in the show, I mean, what did she say? Mad Dog called. Mad Dog said, "I am conjoined with Tina. She's a constellation." Right. So that's the point. Is these two were tight. I mean, it's tight because you can be 6 days into a game.
Yeah.
Right. And Tina had absolutely no problem cutting Mad Dog's throat, which is not what I expected from the sweet little Southern Belle mama.
No.
What about you, Bobby? Did that surprise you at all when it happened?
Honestly, rewatching this, I don't understand how that was good for her game, because she had Mad Dog in her back pocket. She was never going to turn on her. She fully trusted her. That's just the number for you and your side. She seemed to get along well with her side and with Colby and everybody. So it didn't make sense to me. Besides the whole age barrier, which she still wasn't that physically,
she wasn't,
less than Mitchell by any means. I just didn't understand it. There had to have been something we didn't see, or maybe there's this underlying thing where we have to take a young man opposed to an older woman. Like, no matter what, even if they're physically on the same page, we have to take the younger man than the older woman.
they're in the middle of the challenge. So, I mean, obviously you have some sense of how people have performed. Like I said, clearly with Mad Dog, they know that she keeps falling over. Mitchell, I guess, might not have been dragging. The tribe, again, they can't really, you can't even really see it. It's easier to see from the outside.
Yeah.
Who's doing well, who's doing badly.
And I feel like Keith said, sorry, go ahead.
But you're right. So what did Keith say?
I was going to say, I think Keith said it best. That was one challenge. Like we have many other challenges coming up that might, be to her specialty. So we can't just judge it by one competition. And they had Keith, they had, all these things. The only thing I can think of is Colby might have been closer to Mitchell at this point. We do see him talking to Mitchell and telling him what Keith said about him. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it had to do with more so with Tina being loyal to Colby more than she was to Mad Dog, and Colby having more of a loyalty to Mitchell, and Colby really getting the final say. So as much as I think we want to, move the blame game or even the credit to certain people, I think it came down to Tina gave up this one to Colby to keep Colby happy and on her side, even though it probably was going to be anyways. And
if it was these days, or even, by the time we get to Survivor 10, we would see this laid out very clearly. At this point, they were still learning how to tell the story. And so why we did get this thing from Colby saying it's either going to be this or this. But obviously there were conversations. And there is an idea, especially early on, that, keeping the tribe united. Right? She could have just said, I'm not going to vote for Mad Dog. I'll vote for somebody else. And I know she's going to go home and it's fine. But in terms of integrating with the tribe, her best way of saying, yes, I'm very tight with Mad Dog, but the rest of you want her gone, and I want to be a good member of the tribe, so fine, so I'll vote her off too. It's not like she was the deciding vote.
Well, and it's also
once everybody else is voting, you might as well go along.
Well, yeah, and I get that, and I totally am in agreement that you need to go that way if that's the way the vote's going. But it also just doesn't make sense as an older woman. You're getting rid of the other older woman, so now you're really showing that that's not something you want on this tribe. And if you're that, you're really pushing that you could be next. Like, why would you take out the person in front of you that is your same archetype?
On the other hand, the argument in terms of keeping somebody else in front of you, Mad Dog will always be the least physically capable person on that tribe. So you could keep her around, and you could always vote her off last time.
Yeah.
But the point, I can't blame Tina. I really can't.
Yeah. No, I mean it's fine. It's just those would be my questions.
Right. Yeah. No. And trust me, like I said, I had questions about it.
I find it very strange that Mad Dog could be physically quite weak, given the fact that she's an ex-police.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Right.
So
but she's ex-police, right? She's not. If somebody who's still on patrol and still has to pass the physical challenge, the physical tests, right? But I'm assuming she's retired. She's a retired cop, right? So she doesn't have to be able to do that anymore. Yeah, I think she had recently retired when she went on the show.
And you can see how traumatized Jeff was when he was announcing that last vote. You would never see that nowadays, really, outside of maybe a Boston Rob or something, where you just are the pure disappointment that Mad Dog is getting voted out. He had high expectations for her.
And we still see it sometimes. We kind of saw it with Elaine, in Island of the Idols. I mean, certainly she lasted a whole lot longer.
Or Rick Devens or something.
Yeah, sometimes he does fall in love with some people, and it's clear, like I said, that he loved Mad Dog. It seems like the cast loved Mad Dog, America loved Mad Dog, but Mad Dog couldn't stay in the game.
Yeah.
And it's all about that, that 5-second difference, right? Because it easily could have gone the other way. And what tends to happen often, a lot of times with these older people, is once they get through the first few episodes, right, then they can stay till the end, right? So the whole thing about keeping the tribe strong is that's the strongest thing at the beginning. And then once you even go through after 3-4 episodes, that will become much less of an issue. Partly because, again, the older people, I think, who survive to that point are good enough in the challenges that people are no longer saying, oh my God, I love her, but we got to get her out.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas I'm feeling that after that loss, I have a feeling that was the discussion back at camp. Again, we didn't see any of it. Right, which is something that needs to be fixed and is fixed as we go on.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
I just didn't look at. We all love her. She just dragged us down. She's why we lost. In this case, I think it probably was true.
Mm-hmm.
So she had to go home.
So,
Okay.
so Karen,
Mhm.
if in the unlikely event of me doing Survivor, I'd bring you along, Bobby.
I love that so much. Amazing Race, here we come. Me and you,
Yeah.
Tim.
Yeah. We'd be tethered by some umbilical cord, which Karen would have knitted. And, would I survive at all?
I think you'd have a rough time on Survivor just because you know you'd have to start cutting up one of those 3-piece suits. Right after a few days, right, people start ripping the sleeves off of things, and you know, you'd be wearing just the vest and your underwear to keep calm.
I would still be fully clothed. Believe me.
People would vote you out immediately just because you're so likable that it'd be someone that's instantly a threat to people.
Well, that's what happened with Elaine. So again, so Tim obviously hasn't seen the season. So Elaine's season, the first episode, that was kind of the discussion, was that they were already saying in the first episode, like, we got to get rid of her. We can't beat her. And she's like, come on, people, the game just started. You got plenty of other chances to kick me out.
Yeah. She says that. She's like, let's put a pin in that and use it later.
Exactly. Right. So the same thing could have happened. But you know, she did survive. Unfortunately, I think Tim would too. But I do predict you can't keep the 3-piece suit on in, you know, in you know, I'm thinking, you know, tropical climes. Like I said, I'm just thinking about other people who've worn suits. Who else has gone on in a suit?
I would have a nice cotton. I would have a nice cotton suit, and you know, for hot weather, and probably a boater. Because
boater's a good idea. But Bobby, am I right here that inside a week we would see a shot of Tim with his vest and his 100%. Underwear while everything else is drying? Yeah,
cut the legs and everything, and
cut the sleeves off.
Oh my gosh, you asked who wore a suit before, and I'm totally blanking on his name, but from Pearl Island,
Savage.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of that, there's been a couple, but I can't think of anyone off the top.
Nick, they put him in a suit. Yes. Generally, and when production puts you in a suit, it's generally not good.
No,
really?
Because it really does slow you down in the game in terms of, if I was going to be dropped into a Survivor season, I don't want to be wearing my lawyer clothes. Are you kidding me?
I do think that the suit jacket could come in handy when it's cold out or rainy. But outside of that, it'd be miserable.
And sock braces would come in very useful, I would have thought, for fishing.
That's true. Yeah. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I've always wondered that. What would I wear? Okay, technically, you don't really get a choice. They tell you what to wear, but what would I wear or try to push forward in my clothing? And I still haven't figured out exactly what the perfect thing is. I'd have to talk to PG. She'd hide stuff in the pockets.
Pajamas and a dressing gown. I could do that.
There you go.
That'll work. That works. Yeah.
It'd be like a scene from Peter Pan. Pajamas, dressing gown, and probably Teddy.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. So anything else? So he said, and next week we can just see that Scoopin is going to be able to play with the blood of something, and it's not going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to add for this episode before we do the housekeeping and get out of here?
I will say this: it was remarkably short. The episode, how remarkably short the episode felt. Like, I felt like it was done like that. Like, I don't think nowadays Survivor episodes feel much more drawn out. And it might be because it was 38 minutes opposed to, 43, 45. But it just felt like, and I think it's also the aspect of after the tribal council, before the tribal council, where you nowadays see a lot more gameplay and a lot more interaction.
Right.
This is just kind of like boom, boom, done, tribal out. You know, I do appreciate that they added to those aspects more in recent seasons than they did back then.
Right. Like I said, it would be nice if we actually saw the conversation that we know must have happened.
Yep.
Where they came back after the challenge and they said, look, this is what we have to do.
Yeah. And Tim, 3 episodes in, if you had to pick someone to win, who's your winner pick?
Oh, wait a minute. I've got a list here.
I'm dying to know.
Yeah. Let's see how he's doing.
Good question.
Or maybe even final 2. Who do you have in final 2 and winning?
I think Michael's going to go a long way.
Okay.
Despite the fact that you don't like him.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. People I don't like one season.
I think oddly, if Nick were to survive the threat of being seen as lazy, he might survive. He might go a long way. Kel's
gone. Yeah.
He's already gone.
You liked Kel before, though, right?
Yeah, I like. Yeah.
I think after the first episode, I think Tim liked 4 people.
Colby.
Okay.
Colby. Yeah.
That's a very understandable pick.
I think we got a choice between Colby, Nick, and Michael. So 3 boys.
All right.
Okay. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see how that plays out.
Otherwise, I would have gone for Marilyn.
Gotcha.
Right. Yeah.
Secretly, and me and Karen are just sitting here, just like twiddling our thumbs, and like, we know what happened.
Right, exactly.
and you're both doing poker faces, and there's a lot of smiling going on. So I know I'm either so far off the mark or so bang on.
Not necessarily.
No, you have picked out a bunch of the big characters, which is where you start.
That's all I go for. I just go.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
There's no substance here. It's just character and panache. That's
another thing is, besides someone who hasn't watched the show, I haven't talked to someone who's currently watching the show or is starting the show who's never known what happened since 2001. So, like, to get those fresh eyes that are actually involved and interested in the show is kind of exciting, and it's like watching it again for the first time. You know, we're seeing it through your eyes.
Right. Like I said, to go back and because we have these memories of what we remember happening, right? But then actually going back and watching the actual episodes, you're realizing, oh, we had that with Borneo, that there were, the big moment from Borneo that everybody remembers doesn't happen, right? The one where, it's funnier that a fat naked gay guy with $1 million.
Exactly.
I think you ask Survivor fans, they all remember that quote, except it never happened.
Yeah, exactly. And then another thing too is, for us, we know what these characters become in future seasons or even in real life. So we might smile or chuckle or do a little thing here and there when we hear, we bring up a name or you talk about a name. And it might not necessarily even have to do with this game. It might have to do with
something they did something they did later
or outside the game. But that's why we do it, because it's not necessarily you're in the wrong direction. It's more so this is what we think of when we think of this person.
Yes.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Yep. All right. So Tim, Bobby, you can start. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me at Goodsby Bobby on Twitter. And it's GOODSBY for my last name. I'm going to also be, like I said earlier in the podcast, going to be writing articles for Programming Insider. Been doing it all season for Big Brother. Definitely go on there and check it out. I post it on my Twitter every week. I didn't have an article this last week. It was a crazy time at work, but I'm going to be doing one this Wednesday, and I will have that up for you guys to view. So please check that out at programminginsider.com. Once again, shout out to Doug for the opportunity. And if you can find me on Twitter, add me as a friend. I'd love to talk some Big Brother and Survivor.
Are you still doing the daily updates with
Tim? Yeah. So if you probably have seen, they've added a lot of fresh faces to RHAP, and as much as I love that, it's been awesome. I'm super excited. The opportunities aren't as incumbent. Right. And so I think that I've already done one this season. I'm hoping to do more, but I just don't know when they'll come.
Yeah, no, they do. They've added a lot. They used to have kind of like a rotation through the week almost, and now they do this REP class of 2020, which I think is great. I'm looking at who are all these people, right? It's kind of my reaction because I'm old and I'm like, get off my lawn. Where are the people that I like? But some of these people are amazing, and I'm really glad that they found them.
It's been really cool, and we get to see people from different backgrounds or different ethnicities and stuff that you don't get necessarily on Big Brother or Survivor as prevalent. But now Rob has done such a great job of bringing in diversity that it's really added to the podcast, and you get to see other people's opinions towards important topics, especially with this whole racial barrier thing that we've seen in the Big Brother house. To have those faces that can speak on it, no one wants to hear from a white straight male like me on the topic of race or or sexism or anything like that, because to be honest, I need to be the one sitting back and listening more than talking at this point. And so that's why I'm so excited that we do have these fresh faces to be able to speak on these topics. And as much as I might not be able to go on once a week anymore, I'm still glad that other people get this opportunity that I'm just lucky to be a part of. And when I get my opportunity, I try to make the most of it.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And like I said, and now you also have other things. It's not your only outlet in terms of talking about the shows. So, Tim, what about you? Give everybody about where they can find you.
It's always a delight to hear Rob's name. And the program talked about it. I have very fond memories of doing things, and tremendous. So you can find me on YouTube under Zontul Films Limited. That's ZONTUL FILMS LTD. So I'm putting up quite a lot of new material. Some of it's a bit boring, of course. Some of it's a sort of teachery material to try and help people who may be threatened with another lockdown, and therefore they may have difficulty going to school and so on. But so I'm just getting ready for that.
Oh, that's great.
But I'm also posting sort of fun things like me singing strange lyrics to songs and so on. But and bits and pieces. So there's that. Then on Instagram, I'm Professor_Tim_Wilson. And on Twitter, I'm Prof_Tim_Wilson. And is that all me? That's all, no, I had an article written about me today. Which
Where? Tell us.
It got published in a magazine, a sort of fashion magazine. I've become.
Oh, is that the one you sent me the link, right?
Yeah, and so I feel a bit like Tootsie in that sort of where she's doing all this posing, and so I've done a fashion spread, but they've also written some rather nice things about me as an animator, and it's always nice to sort of have one sort of a fallback career being referenced, because I do think of myself as an animator primarily. Probably more than I think of myself as an academic, and certainly more than I think of myself as a reality TV person. I think my real life is dedicated to drawing, and I think there's a huge future there that hasn't been tapped, because partly because Disney was so successful in using animation as a vehicle for telling children's stories. But even Disney was experimenting in things like Fantasia. He was experimenting with animation as an art form. And I remember that, I got the book, a great book by a man called Field, called The Art of Walt Disney. And so in the early 1940s, Disney was being promoted as this man who was developing a new art form. And I think we've still not seen what animation can do, because it can bring to life things we cannot possibly see. I was thinking the other day, wouldn't it be wonderful to see some of those great musicals that we have never seen, like the Fred and Adele Astaire musicals from the early 1920s. Fred Astaire came over with his sister to the West End and took the West End by storm. I think one of the shows is Funny Face, and it's never been done. And we've never seen Adele Astaire dance, but she was sort of spectacular.
So they got started together, and then pretty promptly she was replaced by Ginger Rogers?
No, not at all, not at all. She retired to marry into British royalty.
Oh, okay. And so he needed another partner.
And he then went over to the States and then went to Hollywood, and they teamed him up with Ginger Rogers. But the big partnership was the brother and sister act, and we can't see that. But we do have the music, and presumably somebody noted down dance notation. One could bring that to life with animation. One could show people how wonderful this must have been. Because
that would be amazing.
No, wouldn't it be extraordinary? We could take some of these great shows from the early 20th century and show people what they might have looked like, and that sort of thing. I think would be a great way of using this art form. So yes, and this rather nice magazine has done an article about my enthusiasm for animation, and they did a photo shoot as well, which was great fun to do.
That's
and
awesome.
There's a magazine called White, which is very much an aspirated word, really, but it's spelled WHYTT, White. I sound like the fella from The Simpsons there, too. White. The only people I know who aspirate the word white and why and which are people from Northern Ireland who do this routinely. And I remember somebody saying to me, you know that spin-off show of The Wizard of Oz, and she said to me, I've got to get this right. Which? I know.
Yeah.
Which? That's it. I got it wrong. I got it wrong. Which? And she was very critical of me because I would just say which. Anyway.
Right. So, and you see my Twitter handle, Karen's Talks a lot. Like the same thing that Bobby said. I love to hear from people. I know my voice is annoying. Don't bother with that. But other than that, yeah, please feel free. We love to hear what we're doing right, and even what we're doing wrong. That's how we improve. So coming up on Survivor NSFW. First of all, please follow our coverage. We just finished up World's Toughest Race Eco Challenge Fiji. The episodes are on Amazon Prime. All of our coverage should be up. And everything you can find at ad-free NSFW.com. That is where, as a patron, you can come in and listen to all of our shows with no ads and sooner than we would otherwise release them. We also do extra shows, like we do Castaway Watch-alongs, we do weekly Q&As, we do Zoom Hangouts. So if any of that sounds like fun, if you want to hang out with Johnny Fairplay, please consider checking that out. In terms of what's coming up next week, I have to admit that, everything is obviously different because we're not doing this live. So I did not get the actual plugs from Johnny. So I do know, I'm on the show, I don't know who the upcoming guests are. But on Thursday nights, we go live right after the episode. And then on Monday night, we normally tape an episode that we often drop Tuesday morning. So tonight, Johnny and Matt and I are going to get together with somebody who's played Big Brother and talked about what's going on this week. And you'll just have to tune in and figure out who we have. Next week, however, on Rewind, I do know who we have. Tim and I are going to be joined by Brett LaBelle from Survivor Millennials versus Gen X.
I love Brett. I got to talk to him in person. Just the nicest guy.
Brett is hilarious. Yes, you will enjoy Brett. Brett is a Boston police officer.
Really?
Right, who was also gay. And that was even discussed kind of on the show. He was not that out to his tribe mates when he was there.
We didn't find out till halfway through the show.
Right. And I'm not even sure if he told the rest of his tribe. He told Zeke.
He told Zeke, yeah.
Right. But very much not the kind of, if you're looking for the stereotypical gay guy, this is kind of not it.
No.
Right. Like I said, he's a Boston cop. He's a big Boston cop.
He's a big guy, drinks beer,
drinks lots of beer, the Boston accent, pack your cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And brings me back to my college days.
5 minutes of talking to him in person, you can just see how people love him because he's just so sweet and so down to earth.
And
So
he's
nice.
very, very, very funny. So we're really looking forward to that.
I'm jealous you get to podcast with him.
I know I have met Brett in person, but I've never had, any kind of a long conversation with him. So this will be really fun.
That's awesome.
So anyway, I hope that all of you will stay healthy, stay safe, wear your damn masks, and we will see you next week on Survivor NSFW. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Say bye-bye.
Bye.